Chapter 1864. The awakening of the devourer. The dim light was so fast that it arrived behind Zhuowen in an instant. It was so fast that Zhuowen did not even have time to react. At this moment, Zhuowen was trembling all over and sweating profusely. His heart was beating wildly and he was extremely nervous. An ominous premonition filled his mind. There was no doubt that the dim light gave him a strong sense of crisis. He even had no doubt that if the dim light fell on the back of his head, he would definitely die. However, the speed of the dim light was too fast, almost exceeding Zhuowen's reaction speed. Zhuowen's thoughts spun 1,000 times in an instant, and the dim light was already very close. In the next moment, it would pierce through the back of his head and kill him. Suddenly, the dim light that was about to penetrate the back of Zhuowen's head suddenly stopped a few inches away from the back of Zhuowen's head. It was as if time had stopped. Zhuowen naturally found that the dim light behind him had stopped abruptly. His eyes were filled with astonishment. "Little guy, hurry up and leave here. The devourer of the larvae was finally destroyed by Yang Yi. I have reached my limit and am powerless to reverse the situation. Hurry up and leave." A vicissitude voice slowly sounded from behind. Zhuowen turned his head and saw Cungjie sitting on the throne behind him. Cungjie's face was full of bitterness. At this moment, Cungjie's face was full of pain. The countless black veins that pierced into his body were surging crazily, as if they were absorbing Cungjie's essence and blood. Zhuowen took a deep look at Cungjie. He sighed slightly and jumped into the gate of reincarnation. The gate of reincarnation closed and then collapsed into nothingness. The candlelight in the center of the hall was finally extinguished. Cungjie groaned in pain and slowly opened his eyes. His eyes were scarlet and he said coldly, "I didn't expect that it would backfire on me and let that little guy run away. But the last trace of Cungjie's consciousness has been completely devoured by me. In the future, this guy will not hinder me." Bang! 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 All of a sudden, the hall shook violently again. Cungjie slowly lifted his head, his eyes darkening as he muttered, "What a tough guy. This sky worm isn't weak at all. However, it's just wishful thinking if he wants to dig out Devour's left eye. I've been dormant in Devour's body for so many years. Finally, I've waited until Devour's weakest moment. It's the time for me to turn the situation around. How could I let you destroy my plan?" Then, the entire hall collapsed. More black veins stretched out from the walls around the hall. There were so many black veins that they almost looked like a black sea. There was no end sea of black sea of them. Those black veins of black veins. Of the dark veins of the black veins. Cungjie grunted coldly and slapped with his right hand, causing the enormous and long black-colored meridian to shoot out explosively like an arrow that had left the bow and abruptly bore into the depths behind him. The black veins were so long that they went through Devour's eyeball directly into his brain. At this moment, Devour was so weak that he was almost dying. The black veins didn't encounter much resistance when they entered his brain. They entered his brain smoothly. Haha. What the strongest race in the universe. I've been dormant in your body for a long time. Finally, I can control you. Haha. Cungjie laughed wildly in the eyeball. At this moment, outside the left eye, 12 shadows were moving fast on the surface of Sky Worm. They cooperated well, and soon, they had entangled Sky Worm. Sky Worm squinted and sneered. "You're just a lowly parasite. You want to stop me? You're courting death." With that, Tiangu's body suddenly swelled as the black fog spread. Countless bone spikes emerged from its huge, black body. They moved extremely quickly, piercing through the 12 figures that constantly flashed around Tiangu in an instant. Swoosh. However, the 12 shadows didn't seem to feel any pain. The moment the bone thorns pierced through them, they continued to attack Sky Worm. Sky Worm sneered, and a terrifying vibration came from his bone spikes. Then, the 12 figures that had been pierced exploded into dust. After the 12 shadows exploded into powder, a shadow flew out from the glabella of each of the 12 shadows. They were the parasites of the exotic beasts. The 12 parasites roared furiously and continued to charge at Tianzong. If it were any other person, they would definitely be at a loss at this juncture. However, Tianzong merely sneered as another 12-bone spurs grew from his body. The 12-bone spikes pierced into the bodies of the 12 parasites with extreme precision, instantly shattering them into countless drops of black blood. These disgusting things are really hard to deal with. Skyworm's bone thorns slowly retracted into his body. His eyes were cold and gloomy. These are the parasites in Devour's body. Devour's massive body naturally has all kinds of parasites. If I'm not wrong, Tsungjie should be under the control of the strongest parasites. Otherwise, he wouldn't be able to control these parasitic corpses. I wonder if the parasites have completely taken over Tsungjie's body, said Yang Yi with a faint smile. Skyworm nodded. He stomped his right foot and dashed toward Yang Yi's left eye. He planned to follow Yang Yi's order and dig out Devour's left eye. Swoosh! The moment Skyworm was about to reach Devour's left eye opened. Layers of circular pupils revealed a strange gleam. At the same time, a terrifying aura fell on Skyworm. Skyworm's body froze. Then, black mist burst out from his body as if countless bombs were exploding in his body. He retreated step by step, spitting out black blood. His face was pale. Yang Yi's pupils shrank. He waved his sleeve, and instantly, the void power turned into a giant hand, grabbing the heavenly insect. Then, he stomped his right foot, gathering the void power under his feet as he stepped back, moving away from Devour, who had opened his left eye all of a sudden. At this moment, Devour's left eye was fully opened. His dull pupils now radiated a strange black light, coldly gazing at Yang Yi and Skyworm. Sir, Devour. Has he woken up? Skyworm was scared out of his wits. Yang Yi squinted, gazing at Devour's left eye. He pondered for a while and then sneered. Devour has hatched a baby. He will become weaker and weaker. Eventually, the baby will devour him, becoming the nourishment for the baby to grow. It can be said that Devour with a baby is doomed to die. At least, before the baby swallows all the energy in his body, he won't wake up. Skyworm's entire body was trembling. His lips trembled as he asked, Master, what is going on now? Yang Yi's eyes sparkled as he said coldly, Devour Master. Haha, you're smarter than I thought. I didn't expect that you could guess Devour Master. Devour's left eye gazed at Yang Yi, his cold voice echoing. Yang Yi's eyes were cold as he said, I wonder if I should call you Tsungjie or Parasite. Devour's left eye looked at Yang Yi, smiling evilly. You can call me Tsungjie or Parasite. No matter what, you two are going to die. That baby in Devour's body has a big appetite. It's still swallowing the stars in Devour's body. I guess you've done something to it, haven't you? Anyway, no matter what you've done, from now on, that baby Devour won't get any energy from the adult Devour. Then, Devour roared. His massive body began to wiggle. Then, the wiggling surface of his body exploded, and a giant beast that was several thousand meters tall was blown away. It was in a sorry state. This 1,000-meter-tall beast looked exactly the same as Devour. It also had 12 horns, but it was much smaller than the adult Devour. Moreover, it looked much younger than the adult Devour. The baby Devour looked confused. It looked at the adult Devour in front of it, hissing as it wanted to enter the adult Devour's body one more time. However, when the baby Devour approached the adult Devour swung its sharp claws, hitting the baby Devour. The baby Devour didn't have time to react. It was blown away, hitting the rock wall behind the cave. Seems like you can only use a part of the adult Devour's power. Yang Yi sneered as he looked at the baby Devour, who was struggling to get up from the rock wall with confused eyes. Even if it's only a part of my power, it's enough to kill you. Tsungjie sneered, then controlled Devour's body, storming toward Yang Yi. Yang Yi's eyes shrank. He stomped his right foot, shattering the void under his feet. Then, he brought Skyworm into the void. Little guy, follow me. Yang Yi smiled, waving at the baby Devour as the void shattered not far from him. Devour stared at Yang Yi confusedly. He didn't know why, but he felt a sense of intimacy from this human, as if this human was his closest relative. Devour couldn't bear any malice towards Yang Yi. Devour hissed, then jumped into the void where Yang Yi was. Immediately, the void exploded. Yang Yi controlled the void power, dashing toward the exit. His speed was so fast that he almost turned into an illusory shadow. "You can't run away," Tsung Jie roared. The adult Devour's giant left eye gazed at Yang Yi, then dashed up into the sky. Boom! In just a blink of an eye, Devour had broken through the ceiling of the massive cave. The long horn on its head thrust out, creating a big hole in the ceiling. Countless rocks fell down. Devour's power was too intimidating. With just one move, the scorching hot lava in the entire underground cave had turned into a giant fire dragon, rolling up and creating a massive lava wave. Chapter 1865. Shuddering Devour was too powerful. Moreover, the way he broke through the ground was extremely rough, as if he was going on a rampage. For a moment, the entire heavenly armor star shook violently. The cracks on the heavenly armor star, which was already in ruins, became denser and denser. It was as if the entire heavenly armor star was about to shatter. On a broken mountain peak, a broken sword was stuck in the ground. Ji Chenyang was trying her best to pull it out with her immortal energy. However, the surface of the broken sword was covered with a powerful seal. Helpless, Ji Chenyang could only use his immortal elemental energy to weaken the powerful restrictive light on the surface of the broken sword with brute force. Almost done. Ji Chenyang's beautiful eyes were filled with excitement. Suddenly, the entire ground began to tremble. Then, Ji Chenyang's entire being became confused. The shaking became more and more violent. Countless huge gullies appeared on the ground as if it was the end of the world. What's going on? Ji Chenyang hurriedly leaped into the air. Staring at the countless cracks on the ground, she couldn't help but suck in a breath of cold air. In the huge black lake, countless black shadows flashed. From time to time, some strange human figures would jump out of the water, stirring up countless black splashes. Whoosh! Suddenly, at the edge of the black lake, a huge palace emerged from the water. Creak! The door of the main hall slowly opened, and a rather wretched figure walked out of the main hall. The power of the revolving stab holy talisman is really strong. If I hadn't broken through to the early sky immortal realm in the central divine palace, it wouldn't have been so easy to get rid of the power of the revolving stab holy talisman. The man was tall and slender, with a handsome face. He was the divine child, Yuan Hongwen. Ever since he was trapped in the central palace by Yang Yi and Heavenly Insect and thrown to the bottom of the Black Lake, Yuan Hongwen had been cultivating like a madman. Every time he was attacked by those strange human figures at the bottom of the lake, Yuan Hongwen, who was jolted by the palace door, was very sullen. Fortunately, after those strange humanoid figures attacked the central palace for a long time, they realized that they could not break through the palace at all. They lost interest in the palace, and Yuan Hongwen successfully broke through to become a celestial immortal under the pressure. After that, Yuan Hongwen used his own strength to erase the power of the spiral thorn saint talisman that Yang Yi had placed outside the temple door. Then, he brought the temple up to the shore of the Black Lake with difficulty. I've already broken through to the early stage of the Sky Immortal Realm. That Zhuoan might still be in the late stage of the Earth Immortal Realm, or even the peak of the Earth Immortal Realm. However, there's a huge gap between the Sky Immortal Realm and the Earth Immortal Realm. If I meet Zhuoan again, I'll definitely be able to defeat him. After putting away the central divine palace, Yuan Hongwen's eyes were still filled with excitement. He was still brooding over the 2 defeats he had suffered at the hands of Zhuoan. Rumble. Suddenly, the entire ground began to tremble violently. Countless cracks appeared on the ground, and even the black lake behind Yuan Hongwen began to churn with huge black waves. Yuan Hongwen staggered and almost fell to the ground. His eyes were filled with shock as he looked at the black lake churning with terrifying waves. His body trembled and his face turned pale. Did something happen underground? Yuan Hongwen furrowed his brows and murmured in a low voice. Not only Yuan Hongwen and Ji Chenyang, but all the other Chaos War gods on the surface of the Heavenly Armor Star were also shocked. They all flew to the sky above the Heavenly Armor Star, not daring to linger on the surface of the Heavenly Armor Star. Swoosh! Suddenly, a figure burst out from the Black Lake. Yuan Hongwen looked over and his pupils shrank. He clenched his fists because the person who came out of the Black Lake was none other than Yang Yi. Although Yuan Hongwen hated Yang Yi very much, he knew that Yang Yi's strength was terrifying. Therefore, he retreated without hesitation until he was as far away from the Black Lake as possible. Of course, Yang Yi didn't care about Yuan Hongwen. After jumping out of the Black Lake with the sky worm and devour lava, he didn't slow down. He continued to soar up into the sky, moving away from the heavenly armor star. Yang Yi's strange behavior also caused Yuan Hongwen to be puzzled. He muttered in a low voice, "Is there something underground chasing after Yang Yi?" Not long after Yuan Hongwen said that, the heavenly armor star shook even more violently. Then, countless waves surged from the Black Lake. Then, the ground around the Black Lake within 100 million jong radius was overturned. A giant beast, so huge that they couldn't see the end of it, stormed out from the ground. This giant beast was too huge. Its body was 1/10 of the size of the heavenly armor star. Moreover, when it jumped out of the ground and soared into the starry sky, its body was still growing. When the giant beast got out of the heavenly armor star's range, it hovered in the starry sky billions of kilometers away from the heavenly armor star. Yuan Hongwen had already hidden in the central palace when the giant beast broke out of the ground. After all, the giant beast was too huge. Its body alone had already covered the place where he was just now. Therefore, Yuan Hongwen had no choice but to enter the central palace bitterly. As for Ji Chenyang and the others, they were far away from the Black Lake. Therefore, when the giant beast flew out of the heavenly armor star, they weren't affected too much. At this moment, 1/10 of the heavenly armor star's surface had become a bottomless abyss. If one looked from afar, one could see that the cracked heavenly armor star looked as if it had been bitten by a giant beast. An extremely ugly gap had appeared. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. Many figures gathered at the edge of the huge abyss. Ji Chenyang was among them. They stared at the huge hole in the abyss. Their minds were shaken and their bodies were trembling. Swoosh. A palace flew down from the abyss and stopped not far from Ji Chenyang and the others. Then, the palace door opened and Yuan Hongwen walked out in a sorry state. "Brother Yuan, what happened down there? You should be around here, right?" Ji Chenyang couldn't help but ask. Yuan Hongwen's mouth was full of bitterness. "Actually, I don't know. Those who can go deep underground are at least at the Sky Immortal realm. The God Lord didn't let me go with him." "What about Zhuowen? I remember that Zhuowen also went to your side at that time, right?" Ji Chenyang asked. Yuan Hongwen sighed. "Zhuowen did come to my place. However, he went deep underground. I don't know how he is now. He went in. Does he want to die? My forefather told me that it's extremely dangerous to go deep underground. Those below the Sky Immortal realm must die. Even Sky Immortal realm experts have the risk of dying. Why did Zhuowen go in?" Ji Chenyang didn't understand. Yuan Hongwen shook his head helplessly. Then, he looked up at the sky. Above the heavenly armor star, the adult Devour's enormous body covered the sky like a black cloud. The entire heavenly armor star was shrouded in darkness as if it was night. "Now, I'm more curious about what that thing is. It came out from the underground of the heavenly armor star. It's too terrifying." Looking at the colossal creature, Yuan Hongwen couldn't help but tremble. He felt that he was like an insignificant ant in front of such a terrifying beast that could be squashed to death at any time. The rest of the people were also trembling. This huge beast was too terrifying. They couldn't even muster up the will to resist. They couldn't help but feel a sense of worship towards this huge beast. This was the innate fear of those who were inferior to those who were superior. What about my forefather and the others? Didn't they come out from the underground? Ji Chenyang seemed to recall something and couldn't help but ask Yuan Hongwen. Yuan Hongwen looked at Ji Chenyang in silence. The bitterness at the corner of his mouth became thicker. He was cursing inwardly. He wanted to ask someone else this question. Ji Chenyang was asking the wrong person. Looking at Yuan Hongwen's expression, Ji Chenyang knew that he didn't know either. She couldn't help but feel disappointed. Boom, boom, boom. Suddenly, A terrifying white pillar burst out from the bottom of the abyss of the heavenly armor star. The white pillar was so huge that it contained an extremely dense amount of immortal chi. The immortal chi pillar turned into 10 thick white pillars that shot up from the inside of the heavenly armor star. They swept into the heavenly armor continent from 10 different directions. This is, Yuan Hongwen, Ji Chenyang, and the others all noticed the 10 white pillars. They realized that the 10 white pillars were constantly wriggling and eventually turned into 10 white staircases that led directly to the interior of the heavenly armor continent. Has the passage between the heavenly armor continent and the heavenly armor star been opened? Yuan Hongwen muttered softly. At this moment, above the heavenly armor continent, 6 huge white vortexes appeared in the sky above the central continent. A white vortex also appeared in the sky above the eastern land, western region, southern barbarian, and northern continent. Many warriors on the heavenly armor continent saw the true appearance of the heavenly armor star through the white vortexes. When they saw the 1/10 crack on the heavenly armor star, they all took in a breath of cold air. This crack was so big that it wasn't smaller than the entire heavenly armor continent. What kind of power could create such a huge crack? What is that? All of a sudden, someone noticed that in the starry sky not far from the heavenly armor star, there was a giant beast that was as big as the heavenly armor star. It was flying through the starry sky at an extremely fast speed. In front of this gigantic beast, a young man wearing a devil mask was constantly flashing. Under the man's feet, there was a 10-meter wide disc, which had many twinkling starlight on its surface. Haha. Turns out you have an astrolabe. However, the astrolabe's speed isn't as fast as Devour. Chapter 1866. Backlash Heaven Insect. Yang Yi's eyes were gloomy as he waved his sleeve. Instantly, the muscular man standing next to the astrolabe put on a stern face. He stamped his foot, and a terrifying black mist spread out, instantly revealing his million jonglong body. Although Heaven Insect's body was enormous, and his million jonglong body was already intimidating for ordinary warriors, he was still like an ant in front of Devour's body, which was almost as big as the heavenly armor star. Boom. Devour's left eye showed disdain. His right hand swept across the sky, and endless gusts of wind howled. Terrifying sonic booms were heard in the surrounding starry sky. Then, a massive black crack appeared. This crack seemed to stretch for millions of jongs across the starry sky, as if a massive saber was slashing the starry sky. Heaven Insect's eyes were solemn. He growled, and his 12 arms shot out. Then, his body began to squirm, giving birth to terrifying black bone spikes. Countless black bone spikes emerged and gathered in the starry sky, forming a million jonglong black bone spike. At the same time, Heaven Insect's 12 arms twisted and merged, forming a sky-covering giant hand. This sky-covering giant hand grabbed the massive bone spike as if it was holding a black bone spike spear. Then, it swept the bone spike out, creating endless black gusts of wind. Boom, boom, boom. The bone spike and Devour's right claw collided. Instantly, invisible shockwaves spread out in all directions. The massive shockwaves turned the starry sky hundreds of millions of kilometers around into a vacuum without any signs of life. The countless cracks in the surroundings made many warriors shudder in fear. They didn't doubt that even a true immortal would die instantly if he fell into the shattered starry sky. When the shockwaves of their battle spread out, the black mist on Heaven Insect's body continued to erupt. He retreated continuously, his face pale, and his breathing rapid. Adult Devour's body swayed. He took half a step backward, his cold eyes gazing at Sky Worm. Cangjie can only control a small part of Devour's strength. He should be able to display the strength of a peak demigod. However, when Cangjie fully adapts to Devour's body, even if he can only control a small part of Devour's strength, he will still be able to display the strength of an early heavenly god. I have to stop it as soon as possible. Yang Yi squinted, coldly gazing at Devour not far from him. It was the first time he showed a stern face. After saying that, Yang Yi waved his sleeve and immediately released the space that had isolated Ganj. Ganj was still sealed in the immortal god-sealing formation. White chains shot out and bound Ganj. Yang Tianwei, on the other hand, was squatting in front of the indestructible godlock formation. Occasionally, he would extend his right hand and point at the void, as if he was trying to figure out the flaws and weaknesses of the godlock formation. Yang Yi glanced at Yang Tianwei, then at Ganj. He found that the energy of the white chains binding Ganj was much weaker than before. It seemed that Yang Tianwei had put a lot of effort into the immortal godlock formation. At least, the current immortal godlock formation was much weaker than before. Tianwei, how long will it take to break it completely? Yang Yi asked with a frown. I still need some time. Yang Tianwei replied without turning his head. Bang! 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 Yang Yi turned to look at Sky Worm and Devour, who were fighting not far away. He found that Sky Worm was completely suppressed and was being beaten. If it weren't for Sky Worm's freakishly strong self-healing ability, he would have been killed by Devour. Of course, if Devour was at his peak, he could have killed Sky Worm with one move. However, Devour was too weak now, and he was on the verge of death. Moreover, Cangjie couldn't fully control Devour, so he could only display the strength of a peak demigod. Even so, Devour was still terrifyingly strong. It seems that I have to seal Devour completely. I can't let Cangjie continue to control Devour. Otherwise, it will be troublesome. Then, Yang Yi waved his sleeve, summoning the infant Devour. Little guy, do you want to get more powerful energy? Go and deal with him. He has the energy you like. If you absorb him, your growth will be faster, and you will grow up, Yang Yi said, pointing at Devour in front of him. The infant Devour rolled his eyes, looking at Yang Yi. Then, he gazed at the adult Devour in front of him. Devour did have the energy it craved. Back then, it didn't like being kicked out of Devour's body. Although the infant Devour was the offspring of the adult Devour, the Devour clan didn't have the concept of bloodline. When the Devour gave birth to the next generation, the new Devour would swallow the adult Devour and inherit all of Devour's energy. That way, the new Devour would surpass the old Devour in the future. That was why the infant Devour was so cold to the adult Devour. On the contrary, he had a strange feeling of intimacy with Yang Yi. Roar! The infant Devour roared. His hind feet stomped on the void, moving as fast as a shuttle, fighting against the adult Devour together with the heaven insect. Moreover, as the infant Devour knew the adult Devour well, he could barely resist the adult Devour together with the heaven insect. While the three giant beasts were fighting in the starry sky, countless warriors on the heavenly armor star and the heavenly armor continent were suffering. Although the three giant beasts were fighting in the starry sky, they weren't far from the heavenly armor star and the heavenly armor continent. The shockwaves of the battle spread out like earth-shaking waves, shaking the heavenly armor star and the heavenly armor continent hard. Yang Yi quietly watched the battle between the three giant beasts. His right foot stomped on the void under his feet, and he disappeared silently. When he reappeared, he was standing in front of Devour's left eye. Die! Cangjie, who was in his left eye, coldly stared at Yang Yi and gently uttered these words. His left eye emitted a strange invisible fluctuation, which turned into a terrifying shockwave, and instantly covered Yang Yi's whole body and spread into it. Yang Yi's right hand turned into a claw, grabbing it. Instantly, the void in front of him twisted, and the powerful shockwaves were all diverted from their tracks. Cangjie, the adult Devour isn't that easy to control, Yang Yi said indifferently. His left hand reached forward and patted Devour's left eye. A black vortex appeared on the surface of Devour's left eye. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. Yang Yi jumped into the black vortex. Inside the world of the left eye, Cangjie grimaced, gazing at Yang Yi in front of him. Yang Yi indifferently glanced at the massive black veins on Cangjie's back, which rushed to Devour's head. Turns out you're using this to control Devour's brain. No wonder why you're not good at it. Then, Yang Yi stomped on the ground, dashing toward Cangjie in just a blink of an eye. Cangjie's eyes were cold. His right foot stomped on the ground, and the ground cracked. Countless black veins jumped up, blocking all of Yang Yi's escape routes and approaching him. I'm sorry. I'm not strong, but I'm sure you can't compare to me in terms of speed. Yang Yi's eyes were mocking. His right foot stomped on the air, and the power of the void revolved around him. Then, he disappeared from his spot, and the black veins around him missed him. Sungjie had a bad feeling. He turned around and saw that Yang Yi had appeared on the massive veins behind him. Break. Yang Yi's right hand gently patted on the black veins. The void around the veins shattered, and the veins were directly broken by the power of the void. Black blood gushed out, congregating into a terrifying black rain in this space. The moment the black veins were cut off, the adult devourer stopped fighting in the starry sky. Roar. The baby devourer looked excited. He immediately jumped into the adult devourer's body, using the same trick to absorb the energy in the adult devourer's body. In his left eye, Sungjie's eyes were red. He gazed at Yang Yi indignantly and said coldly, "Do you think you can stop me by cutting off the connection with Devour? I've been a parasite in Devour's body for a long time. From the moment I got my consciousness, I've been thinking about how to devour my master. I've been preparing for this day for a long time. You can't stop me." Sungjie's voice was low. Then, his entire body began to wiggle. Suddenly, countless black veins emerged from his body. At the same time, Sungjie didn't look like a human anymore. At this moment, his body was covered with black lumps, which looked extremely disgusting. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. At the same time, countless shadows dashed out of this space. They were all parasites in Devour's body. These parasites had different shapes and sizes. Instantly, they filled the entire space. Yang Yi changed his visage. He made a hand seal. The void around him shattered, and he disappeared from this space. When Yang Yi reappeared in the starry sky, the star compass under his feet twinkled with starlight. He's crazy. He wants to fuse with all the parasites in Devour's body. At that time, I'm afraid he will become a real monster, right? Yang Yi gazed at Devour's left eye with fear. Through the void, he saw countless parasites gathering in Sungjie's body, expanding it unceasingly. Roar. A roar arose. The baby devourer was expelled from Devour's body one more time. The baby devourer wasn't satisfied. However, at this moment, the adult devourer's body was also covered with terrifying parasites. Although the baby devourer could easily kill them, there were too many of them. Every time the baby devourer killed a group of parasites, more parasites would appear to stop the baby devourer's invasion. They were like weeds that couldn't be destroyed. However, when the spring breeze blew, they would grow again. While the battle was taking place in the starry sky, a fragment floated outside the heavenly armor star. This fragment was the teleport continent that brought the god Lord Dohua and the others to the heavenly armor star. Chapter 1867. Karma. This giant beast looked like a whale. Its body was huge, and there was a water spout on top of it. It spat out wisps of misty mist, giving people an ethereal feeling. A beautiful figure stood quietly on top of the giant beast. She gently stroked the giant beast under her feet and said softly, "Luo Yangjing, I've finally awakened you completely. From now on, you're free and no longer bound to anything." The Luo Yang whale's huge eyes rolled up. Looking at the beautiful figure, it chirped happily with a trace of gratitude in its voice. Zhuoan stood quietly behind the beautiful figure and asked with a complicated expression, "Who are you?" When Zhuoan left the world inside the Luo Yangjing, he left a transmitting formation in the Qin Tian tribe so that he could collect and use the netherworld water droplets cultivated in the Qin Tian tribe. In the world of Devour's left eye, Zhuoan immediately thought of the teleport formation in this area after he had sensed that Sungjie had been possessed by the strongest parasite. Thus, he used the reincarnation gate created by the slaughtering finger of Hades as a guide to teleport the master of the divine mausoleum and the others into Luo Yangjing's body. At that time, when Zhuoan stepped into the gate of reincarnation, the transmission array inside the Luo Yang whale almost collapsed because it had been used too many times. In the end, it was the black-veiled woman in front of him who pulled Zhuoan completely into the Luo Yang whale. However, the teleportation array in the Luo Yangjing's body was completely destroyed. Zhuoan quietly stared at the black-veiled woman in front of him. He did not believe that a person he had never met before would be so willing to help him. The black-veiled woman's delicate body trembled slightly. She was still stroking the Luo Yang whale under her feet. She whispered, "Can you not ask now? If the time is right, I will tell you my identity." Zhuoan stared at the back of the woman in the black veil. Then, his eyes pierced through the mist and fell on the empty starry sky. He said in a low voice, "A war is about to break out. When the time comes, the people of the Heavenly Armor continent will be annihilated. We must take the people of the Heavenly Armor continent into the smoke whale." The black gauze woman nodded slightly and said, "I will do it even if you don't tell me. But now it's not the right time. Both Yang Yi and Sungjie are too powerful. We can only wait." Zhuo Wen nodded heavily. The Luo Yang Jing's Luo Yang whale had a strong ability to confuse people. Even Yang Yi in the sky and Sungjie in Devour's body couldn't find the Luo Yang Jing hiding under the teleport continent. Although the Luo Yang Jing was sky god Ganji's tamed beast, the black-veiled woman used some unknown method to forcibly erase the mark sky god Ganji left on the Luo Yang Jing, allowing the Luo Yang Jing to regain its freedom. Since the black-veiled woman had given the Luo Yang Jing its freedom, the Luo Yang Jing was very close to her. It listened to almost everything she said. At this moment, Devour, the giant beast hovering in the starry sky, was covered by countless parasites. There were so many parasites that they flooded Devour like a flood. Yang Yi kept retreating. Devour and Sky Worm followed him closely, gazing at the adult Devour in front of them with vigilance. After all, what was happening to Devour was too strange. Squeak! Squeak! All of a sudden, Devour's body emitted strange noises, which sounded like the sound of a beast eating. Then, Devour's giant body shrank unceasingly. Roar! Devour was covered by parasites. All of a sudden, it faced the sky and roared mournfully like a funeral. This mournful roar created a powerful sound wave that expanded everywhere. Then, the surrounding starry sky collapsed. Yang Yi hurried to step back. The sound wave created by the mournful roar was so terrifying that he didn't dare to get too close. Otherwise, he would be hurt by the sound wave. Most of the parasites on Devour's body exploded under the terrifying sound wave, turning into black blood. However, there were too many parasites. Although most of them had died, more parasites were coming to replace them. After Devour roared his last sorrowful cry, the vitality in his body vanished completely. Devour was on the verge of death, and he was in a deep coma. If the parasites hadn't devoured his flesh and energy, he would have been in a coma until he died. Haha, you're finally dead. You've endured for so long. Finally, you're dead. The strongest parasite in Devour's body laughed crazily. Then, countless parasites swarmed into Devour's body. As the parasites swarmed into Devour's body, the aura of the strongest parasite became stronger. If this guy's aura continues to grow, I'm afraid he will break through to the heavenly god realm. Yang Yi grimaced, gazing at Devour, who was shrinking, and the strongest parasite in his body, whose aura was growing stronger. Tianwei, how long will it take to break the immortal god-locking formation? Yang Yi asked Yang Tianwei, who was standing not far behind him, while gazing at the strongest parasite that was growing stronger. At this moment, Yang Tianwei's forehead was covered in cold sweat. She had even taken out the divination sacred talisman and combined it with the memory of her ancient sea of consciousness. She was using her knowledge of ancient restrictions to break the immortal god-locking formation in front of her. Moreover, Yang Yi was sharp enough to notice that as Yang Tianwei continued to break the formation, the power of the immortal god-locking formation was weakening. At the same time, the white chains on the surface of the heavenly god Galax were dimming. Shortly after, Devour in the starry sky was swallowed by the parasites. Then, the terrifying number of parasites moved toward the center. Soon, all the parasites had gathered in the center. There, a slender figure, dozens of meters tall, hovered quietly in the starry sky. This figure didn't look like a normal human. He had 4 limbs like a human, but his skin was as black as ink, emitting a metallic luster. His eyes were pitch black, and his pupils were in the shape of a 5-point star. Huge black tentacles grew from his head, which looked like hair, reaching his thighs from his back. Haha, I'm finally free. I've swallowed Devour, the strongest race in this starry sky. From now on, I'm called Devour. I've inherited Devour's formidable devouring power. In this starry sky, there's nothing that I, Devour, can't devour. Devour faced the sky and laughed. His sound waves were like sharp swords, filling the entire starry sky. Yang Yi, Tianjiyu, and the others paled when they felt the sound waves. Further away, on the heavenly armor continent, many warriors vomited blood, bleeding from their 7 orifices. They had almost lost their lives under the sound waves. Tianwei. Yang Yi roared. Devour had given him too much pressure, not only because of Devour's current strength, but also because of his formidable devouring power. Devour's devouring power was famous in the entire starry sky. It was said that the strongest Devour could devour an entire star area. It was extremely formidable. Master, I'm afraid Devour's strength has reached the early heavenly god realm. Moreover, he has inherited Devour's devouring power. As Devour continues to devour energy and matter in the starry sky, his strength will become more and more intimidating. He might even reach the true god realm, or even the legendary virtual sky realm. Tianjiyu couldn't help but step back, his eyes filled with fear. Devour was called the strongest race in the starry sky because of its unique body structure. It could devour all kinds of energy and matter in the starry sky and turn them into its own. Because of this formidable devouring power, Devour had endless possibilities. However, because Devour's devouring power was too heaven-defying, it would often devour planets. No matter if it was an abandoned planet or a complete planet full of vitality, it would devour everything. Thus, many warriors in the starry sky had joined hands to attack and expel Devour. Devour, who had been hiding in the heavenly armor star, had been expelled to the starry sky by many experts. At that time, Devour was severely wounded. Moreover, his body had given birth to a new generation of Devour. That was why the parasites in his body had seized the opportunity to attack him. Eventually, he was devoured by the strongest parasites. Since Devour had inherited Devour's devouring power, it could be considered the new generation of Devour. In other words, Devour was even more intimidating because it had devoured Tsungjie. It had also inherited the wisdom of the human warriors. It knew how to show its power and endure. Thus, in the future, Devour wouldn't be like Devour, which could devour energy and matter in the starry sky. Instead, it would do it secretly. This was the most intimidating aspect. When Devour developed secretly in the starry sky, it would become even more rampant in the future. At the same time, it would be a great calamity to the other star areas. It's broken. All of a sudden, Yang Tianwei screamed in surprise, which attracted Yang Yi's attention and made him happy. Behind them, the massive immortal lock god formation was collapsing, turning into countless white light dots. At the same time, the white chains binding heavenly god Ganji were collapsing inch by inch. Heavenly god Ganji, who had his eyes closed, suddenly opened his eyes. In his eyes, there seemed to be countless centuries and planets collapsing. Rumble. The moment heavenly god Ganji opened his eyes, the independent void world that Yang Yi had set up collapsed. Yang Tianwei, who was standing in front of heavenly god Ganji, spurted out blood. She couldn't help but fly backward, gazing at Ganji in fright. Just one look from him could hurt her. Wasn't heavenly god Ganji a little too intimidating? Ganji shot Yang Tianwei an indifferent look. Then, his eyes fell on Yang Yi as he said in a low voice, "You. Too slow." Yang Yi exhaled, nodding at Ganji. "Not slow. It's just the right time. I'm afraid I need your help this time." Ganji looked at Yang Yi, then at Devour, who was standing in the starry sky. His eyes became more solemn. "Devour? No, he has Devour's aura, but it's different." "Who is he?" Ganji frowned. Chapter 1868. Annihilation and Sword Light. Ganji pondered. He glanced at Devour in front of him and muttered, "So, that's how it is. The outer space is called the graveyard of planets. In the outer space, there are only abandoned planets. It's impossible to have a life planet. However, the heavenly armor star is in the outer space, but it's a life planet. Devour is the reason for its formation." Heavenly god Ganji understood. He had planned to give the star nucleus of the heavenly armor star to Yang Yi to refine and become a heavenly god. However, He had never thought that the heavenly armor star didn't have a star nucleus. Instead, it had Devour. 10,000 years ago, Devour wasn't as weak as he was now. Heavenly god Ganji's invasion had triggered Devour's counterattack, which had wounded him. However, shortly after, heavenly god Ganji's eyes were blazing. He looked at the infant Devour floating not far from Yang Yi and said, "Devour's bloodline. If we bring it back to the Sakyamuni territory, I'm sure the higher-ups of the Heaven territory will pay attention to it. At that time, our status will rise. At that time, even the Heaven sect that expelled me will have to curry favor with me." Yang Yi nodded and then turned to Devour. "The only problem is this guy. Devour is one of the strongest races in the universe. It's rare. This guy used to be a parasite in Devour's body. He knows the value of Devour better than we do. Harumph. He's only at the early heavenly god realm. His cultivation base isn't much higher than mine. It's just wishful thinking if he wants to snatch Devour from us." Heavenly god Ganji's eyes were cold. He looked at Heaven Insect and said, "Come back." Heaven Insect's eyes were filled with fanatical worship. It hissed and turned into clouds of black mist, hovering around heavenly god Ganji. Then, it turned into a black armor on heavenly god Ganji's body. "Someone erased the mark I left on the Luo Yangjing. Who has the guts to do that?" Heavenly god Ganji's face darkened. While calling back Heaven Insect, he also wanted to call back the Luo Yangjing. However, he found that the mark he had left on the Luo Yangjing was gone. "The heavenly devouring eye that I got from Devour's body is gone. Now, even the mark of the Luo Yangjing has been erased. Damn it. Don't let me find the culprit. Otherwise, I will make you regret it." Then, Sky God Ganj looked at the heavenly armor continent and heavenly armor planet behind him and said in a low voice, "The energy of this life planet is quite rich. You can let this baby devour the planet. Perhaps this little guy's power will reach the Sky God level. By then, he will be able to help me." Yang Yi smiled and said, "That's exactly what I was thinking. You guys talk a lot of nonsense. But speaking of which, I really have to thank you. If you hadn't invaded this planet and caused the death of so many experts of the heavenly armor continent, I wouldn't have been able to get so many nutrients, especially the top expert of the heavenly armor continent, Cangjie. It was after devouring this guy that I almost transformed, and even my intelligence was significantly improved." Devour's pitch-black eyes fell on Sky God Ganj's wound as he continued, "However, don't even think about taking the baby Devour away. I must have it. I'll give you a chance. Hand over the baby Devour, and I won't make things difficult for you. You can leave." Sky God Ganj laughed. He coldly stared at Devour and said, "Are you showing weakness? You want us to hand over the baby Devour? Only you can think of such a thing. If you don't want to hand it over, then die." Devour didn't want to waste time talking nonsense with Sky God Ganj. He stomped his right foot, shattering the starry sky within millions of miles. At the same time, he dashed toward Sky God Ganj like a wisp of smoke. Sky God Ganj didn't dare to be careless. He also took a step forward. It looked like he had just taken a step, but it felt like he had teleported a long distance with just one step. Sky God Ganj was a true spirit-severing realm expert. He had mastered the power of principles of heaven and earth. Because he had mastered the power of principles of heaven and earth, a spirit-severing realm expert could travel freely in the starry sky. Of course, he still needed the astrolabe to travel a long distance. Rumble. Devour and Sky God Ganj's fists collided. Countless starlight exploded around them. It was as if countless stars had exploded between them. Then, an extremely oppressive shockwave was generated between them. This shockwave was filled with the power of principles of heaven and earth. Just a trace of the power of principles of heaven and earth was enough to kill a celestial immortal realm expert and severely injure a true immortal realm expert. Rumble. In just an instant, Sky God Ganj and Devour were fighting like madmen. The shockwaves generated by each battle could be described as earth-shattering. The heavenly armor continent and the heavenly armor planet were even more affected. Even though they were far away from the battle, the shockwaves still caused the heavenly armor continent and the heavenly armor planet to tremble. Countless cracks appeared on the surface of the heavenly armor planet as if it would collapse at any moment. Countless warriors on the heavenly armor continent were terrified. Even the weaker warriors on the 4 continents outside of the middle mainland were kneeling on the ground, praying for the gods to calm down. Yang Yi frowned slightly as he watched sky god Ganj and Devour fight from afar. Both of them were at the heavenly god realm. Yang Yi was just a peak demigod. He wasn't qualified to intervene in their battle. However, with Yang Yi's eyesight, he naturally noticed that the battle was leaning toward Devour. Devour had obtained Devour's devouring power. He could devour the matter and energy around the starry sky at any time. This allowed him to have an endless supply of energy, as if he would never run out. He could always maintain his best condition. However, Sky God Ganj didn't have such a devouring power. Every time he used a move, he would waste the star god power in his body. If this continued, Sky God Ganj would be defeated. I can only let this little guy devour the heavenly armor planet. As long as he devours this planet, this little guy will have the strength of a heavenly god. At that time, he can join forces with Sky God Ganj to fight against Devour. Yang Yi's eyes flickered. He patted Devour's head and said in a low voice, "Little guy, devour this planet. Then, you'll have more power." Devour gently rubbed Yang Yi's right hand. Then, with a stomp of his right foot, he soared into the sky above the heavenly armor continent. Although Devour was much smaller than the adult Devour, it wasn't small compared to the entire heavenly armor continent. Devour's body was millions of jong tall. As soon as he landed on the heavenly armor continent, he was like a dark cloud, shrouding the entire continent. What the hell is that? Seeing Devour in the sky, countless warriors on the heavenly armor continent were panic-stricken, shivering in fear. The pressure emitted by the infant Devour was too terrifying. At this moment, it felt like the entire continent was being pressed down by countless mountains. The atmosphere became extremely heavy. Devour looked down at the warriors on the heavenly armor continent disdainfully. Then, he roared, opened his mouth, and spat out a black vortex that looked like a black hole. As soon as this black vortex appeared, it divided into 8 vortexes. One of them hovered above the heavenly armor continent, while the other 7 flew toward the surface of the heavenly armor star below the heavenly armor continent, firmly adhering to the surface of the heavenly armor star. As the suction force of the black vortexes grew stronger, the enormous heavenly armor star began to twist, like a folded piece of paper, and was pulled into the 7 black vortexes. The black vortex above the heavenly armor continent also had a strong suction force. Under the influence of the suction force, the heavenly armor continent began to twist. Countless warriors on the continent could clearly feel a terrifying pressure on their bodies. It was as if this terrifying pressure could crush them into countless pieces at any time. Could it be that it's over? In the heavenly armor continent, Yuan Hongwen, Ji Chenyang, and the others had already returned to the heavenly armor continent through the passage on the heavenly armor star. They didn't expect to encounter such a situation as soon as they entered the continent. Yang Yi, you are a member of the heavenly armor continent. Why did you help the Avildor and let this monster devour the continent? Yuan Hongwen roared at Yang Yi, who was standing not far from Devour. He wasn't willing to die like this. Yang Yi coldly looked down at Yuan Hongwen and said indifferently, "I've even killed the god lords of the Chaos Temple, Do Hua and Old Gu. Why should I care about ants like you? Oh, right. I'm not a member of the heavenly armor continent. I'm from the noble Sakyamuni territory." Yuan Hongwen's eyes were crimson red. He clenched his fists tightly, feeling extremely bitter and shocked. In fact, when Yang Yi and Devour had rushed out of the heavenly armor star, he had guessed that the god lord Do Hua had met with a mishap. Now that Yang Yi had pointed it out, Yuan Hongwen felt even more indignant. "What about my forefather? How is he?" Ji Chenyang couldn't help but ask anxiously. "Haha, you're about to die, but you still ask this. I admire you. I can tell you clearly that everyone who went deep underground is dead except for me," Yang Yi sneered. Ji Chenyan's face was as white as a sheet. She couldn't help but take a few steps back, her beautiful eyes filled with despair. At this moment, the suction of the black vortex intensified. The entire continent began to twist as if it would be sucked into the vortex at any time. All the warriors on the continent looked desperate. They knew that once the heavenly armor continent was sucked into the black vortex, they wouldn't be able to survive. In the eastern land, the 9 netherworld realm had been merged into a small world. In this small world, Long Xiaotian and Feng Xiao were leaning against each other, raising their heads to look at the black vortex in the sky. Xiaotian, where do you think that child Zhuowen is now? Now that the continent has reached its end, I just want to see him one more time before I die, Feng Xiao said with tears in her eyes. Long Xiaotian's eyes were resolute. Xiao, Zhuowen will be fine. He has never disappointed us. I think he won't this time, either. While the continent was filled with despair, a beam of sword light, like a bright moon, swept over from not far away. In a flash, it reached the black vortex above the heavenly armor continent. Bang! This beam of sword light was filled with an aura of facing death with equanimity. It contained the law of the birth of heaven and earth. The moment it landed in the black whirlpool, the terrifying suction force immediately froze. The heavy atmosphere that had permeated the continent immediately became much more relaxed under the light of the sword. Chapter 1869. Fight to the death. When the giant beast appeared in the sky of the heavenly armor continent, countless warriors on the continent focused their gazes on the giant beast's tall and straight figure. Their gazes were all fixed on it. Zhuowen, everyone recognized the identity of this tall and straight figure. This figure stood quietly on the Luoyang whale as the wind whistled and blew his long hair. Many years later, all the warriors on the heavenly armor continent would never forget this small but extremely huge figure. This figure was destined to be imprinted in everyone's hearts. This was because when the entire heavenly armor continent was at its most desperate, this figure appeared and broke through the huge black vortex in the sky, bringing hope to everyone. It's Zhuowen. Yuan Hongwen stared at the figure on the Luoyang whale in shock and trembled all over. Ji Chunyan's cherry lips parted slightly, unable to hide the surprise in her eyes. The sword earlier was simply too stunning. Even the two of them felt a trace of worship from the bottom of their hearts the moment they saw the sword. Zhuowen. Zhuowen has appeared. In the 9 nether realm of the eastern land, Long Xiaotian and Feng Xiao, who were leaning against each other, were excited. They looked up at the figure on the Luoyang whale and cried tears of joy. Behind Long Xiaotian and Feng Xiao, Long Xiangding, Long Dingtian, and the other top Rika officials, along with countless Rika people, were also staring at the fearless figure with fanatical eyes. They knew that this figure was a legend of the Rika. As long as this figure appeared, there would be a miracle. This thought seemed strange, but in the hearts of the Rika people, it was extremely firm. At this moment, in the continent, whether it was central or the 4 continents, all the experts who knew Zhuowen were looking up at the young man with the scabbard in his hand. There were mixed feelings, strange feelings, but more than that, there was hope. After Devour's devouring power was released, the entire heavenly armor continent was almost distorted by the devouring power. At that moment, everyone felt an unprecedented sense of despair. At the end of despair, a figure suddenly appeared. Everyone felt as if they were grabbing onto a life-saving straw. Boundless hope emerged in their hearts. This was human nature. At the most desperate moment, someone would step forward bravely. This person would become a great person in everyone's heart, a hero, bringing true hope. Almost all the celestial immortals and true immortals of Heavenly Armor continent had perished in the depths of Heavenly Armor planet. Right now, Yuan Hongwen was probably the strongest person on the continent. At this moment, Yuan Hongwen stared at Zhuowen. Although Zhuowen's aura was indeed very powerful, and he could not see through Zhuowen's cultivation level, he knew that Zhuowen's cultivation level was above his, but he definitely had not reached the true immortal realm. Although Yuan Hongwen was extremely shocked and surprised by Zhuowen's cultivation speed, he was more disappointed. Brother Zhuo's cultivation level has not reached the true immortal realm. He is no match for this exotic beast and Yang Yi. Yuan Hongwen shook his head and sighed. Ji Chunyan's beautiful eyes darkened slightly. She said, "Brother Yuan, why do you say that?" Just now, Zhuowen blocked the black vortex released by the exotic beast. Yuan Hongwen sighed softly. Yang Yi is very strong. I have met him before. This person is related to the divine warring swords. His cultivation level might be a demigod. The exotic beast's strength is probably around that of a demigod as well. Even Cangjie would not be able to contend against these two powerful people. Hearing this, Ji Chenyan's heart sank. The rest of the geniuses of Central Region were filled with despair again. Yang Yi looked at Zhuowen indifferently and grinned. I didn't expect you to be alive. Speaking of this, Yang Yi looked at the woman in black veil behind Zhuowen and said coldly, as the queen of Luoyang Whale, you actually removed the mark of warring swords without permission. You are very bold. The woman in black veil glanced at Yang Yi indifferently and said nothing. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. At the same time, several figures flew out of the Luoyang Whale's mouth. They were the master of the divine tomb, Fuxi, 4 genuine immortal Dao soldiers, Shiji, and the first mountain god. Zhuowen, leave Yang Yi and devour to me. Fuxi suddenly walked to Zhuowen and said in a deep voice. Zhuowen pondered and said in a deep voice, Senior Fuxi, you hold back devour. Leave Yang Yi to me, you. Fuxi frowned. Fuxi frowned slightly. It wasn't that he looked down on Zhuowen, but Zhuowen's cultivation was just too weak. The gap between him and Yang Yi wasn't small. Facing Yang Yi was just courting death. Whoosh. Suddenly, a black light flew out from between Zhuowen's eyebrows. Cheng Huang flew out with the Fuxi cauldron and followed Xiao He. Fuxi, believe in Zhuowen. Although my master has been devoured by the parasite, he still has a backup plan, Xiao He said in a deep voice. Fuxi looked at Xiao He and then at Cheng Huang. Cheng Huang nodded. He knew that Xiao He was right. Master, since you have been in the Nether Corp's forbidden ground all this time, why did you hide your aura and refuse to recognize me? Cheng Huang suddenly asked. Fuxi was silent for a moment. Then, he smiled bitterly and said, I am no longer the original Fuxi. Cheng Huang still wanted to say something, but the golden coffin that sealed Fuxi suddenly opened, and a terrifying aura burst out of the coffin like a tsunami. A withered skeleton slowly sat up from the coffin. Other than the head, the rest of the skeleton was made of bones. The head was that of a middle-aged man. Zhuowen was familiar with the middle-aged man's appearance. It was Cao Yu, one of the 3 demigods from 10,000 years ago. Back then, my physical body collapsed and only my soul was left. Master used a great method to forcibly merge it into Cao Yu's demigod body. Although Cao Yu's demigod body was damaged beyond recognition due to his self-destruction, I have recovered most of my demigod power in the 10,000 years I have been in the Nether Corp's forbidden ground. Today, I will let Cao Yu's might return to the heavenly armor continent. Fuxi laughed and kicked the golden coffin with his right foot. Suddenly, the entire golden coffin flew into the air like a shuttle, heading toward the black vortex above. Bang! 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 Originally, the black vortex was in a stagnant state due to the sword light. When the golden coffin hit the surface of the black vortex, a vast power exploded and the black vortex disappeared. The moment the golden coffin exploded, it turned into 7 surging golden lights, sweeping toward the 7 black vortexes that had devoured the heavenly armor star. The 7 black vortexes were destroyed one after another. Death is inevitable. It can be as heavy as Mount Tai or as light as a feather. I, Fuxi, have struggled at death's door for 10,000 years. Today, I can use my broken body to protect the heavenly armor continent. Fuxi's hearty laughter reverberated in the sky above the heavenly armor continent. He was like a shooting star, dashing toward Devour. Fuxi, Master, Zhuowen looked at Fuxi in silence. His heart was filled with an unprecedented passion. He knew that Fuxi's lifespan was not long. He was a dead man. Every time he used his demigod power, his lifespan would decrease gradually until he died. However, when his home was about to be destroyed, Fuxi burst out with all of his power, even if it meant sacrificing his life. It was a kind of belief. Roar. Devour was enraged when he sensed that the 8 black vortexes had been destroyed. He roared and dashed toward Fuxi. Good. Fuxi's fighting spirit soared to the sky. He had been suppressing it for too long. 10,000 years couldn't be compared to this battle. A moth pursuing light will burn itself to death. I'm willing to protect my home and fight until I die. Fuxi roared and performed the shattering scripture. Streams of shattering power swirled around his body. Then, he clenched his right hand, and the shattering power turned into a long spear. He threw the spear out like a rainbow piercing through the sky, hitting the infant Devour in an instant. Devour growled and slashed with his right claw. Black vortexes condensed into a massive black wall, blocking the shattering spear. At this moment, Fuxi dashed in front of the spear. His right hand pulled the destruction spear out of the spear and swung it, shattering the black wall. Fuxi's eyes were so cold as he thrust the spear into Devour's body. Unfortunately, Devour was one of the most powerful races in the starry sky. Even though he was just a baby, his body was terrifyingly strong. The spear couldn't break his body. However, Devour wasn't unharmed. Under the terrifying attack of the shattering spear, he couldn't help but fly backward. His eyes were filled with fear. First Mountain God, take the Azure Dragon Hall and bring my Rika people into the hall. I'll help you deal with this girl and Yang Yi. I hope you can guide the warriors of the Heavenly Armor Continent into the Luoyang Whale to avoid a big loss. Zhuoan looked at the First Mountain God and the black-veiled woman. The First Mountain God nodded slightly, then took the Azure Dragon Hall and flew toward the eastern land. However, before he left, the First Mountain God slowly took out the black crystal given to him by Cungjie. He glanced at Zhuowen and thought to himself, I wonder if this thing will come in handy. The black-veiled woman was silent. She gently patted the Luoyang whale. The Luoyang whale roared and spat out dense Luoyang fog. The Luoyang whale sank into the Heavenly Armor Continent below. Moreover, the Luoyang fog was not simple. It contained a binding force. When the warriors of the Heavenly Armor Continent came into contact with the Luoyang fog, they fell into a daze. Then, they were guided into the Luoyang whale by the Luoyang fog. However, Yuan Hongwen, Ji Chenyang, and the other geniuses didn't intend to be guided into the Luoyang whale. They refused to enter. They wanted to see how the battle between Zhuoan and Yang Yi would be. Zhuoan, are you okay? Shiji asked worriedly. I'm fine. By the way, Senior Shiji, can you help me capture Yang Tianwei? The remaining holy runes in her body are very useful to me. Zhuoan suddenly transmitted his voice to Shiji. Shiji pondered and nodded cautiously. Then, his body shone with Buddhist light. He flew toward Yang Tianwei, who was behind Yang Yi. Zhuoan, do you need my help? Shiji asked with a frown. Chapter 1870. Against Yang Yi. Seeing Shiji's action, Yang Yi sneered. He clenched his right hand and said, Immortal art, void devour. The void in front of Shiji, in an area of a few hundred feet, started to gather continuously, turning into a huge mouth that was about to swallow Shiji. Zhuowen's feet were filled with Dao intent. Shiji took a step forward and arrived in front of the void mouth. He grabbed the hilt of his sword and pulled it out. A ray of sword light was like the rising sun. Rumble. The sword light was truly powerful. The instant it stood in front of the mouth, the terrifying sword light scattered like flowers from a celestial maiden. It scattered into gorgeous splendor, while the mouth collapsed in the midst of the sword light. Substandard God artifact. Yang Yi stared indifferently at the scabbard in Zhuowen's hand. The instant Zhuowen had blocked Devour Infant's black vortex, Yang Yi had noticed that the scabbard in Zhuowen's hand was the substandard divine weapon of Zhon Bai, one of the Heavenly Armor Continent's 3 demigods. Shiji took a deep look at Zhuowen. The reason why he was not worried about letting Zhuowen deal with Yang Yi was because Zhuowen had Zhon Bai's substandard god artifact. Be careful, Shiji said in a deep voice. Soon after, his body emitted a demonic Buddha light. He used the demonic Buddha transformation, turning his body into a half-demonic Buddha and half-Buddha transformation. Yang Tianwei's face turned gloomy when she saw Shiji using the demonic Buddha transformation. Although she had absorbed the power of the holy talisman and her strength had increased greatly, she had only barely stepped into the ranks of true immortals. There was a big gap between her and a veteran true immortal expert like Shiji. Fortunately, she had the divination holy talisman. Although she was not Shiji's match, she would not be crushed by him. Just as Yang Yi was about to stop Shiji, Zhuo Wen once again drew his sword from his scabbard, while he took a step towards Yang Yi. Whoosh! The second ray of sword light was like the noon sun. Whether it was power or aura, it was much stronger than the first ray of sword light. When the second sword light swept out, Yang Yi's face began to change. He formed a seal with his right hand, and the void within a radius of several hundred feet around him exploded. The fragments of the void were like the strongest defense in the world. Bang! The second sword light slammed into the void fragment, but it only stagnated for a moment. Soon after, the void fragment was annihilated by the sword light. Yang Yi's eyes were gloomy, and he could not help but retreat step by step. Zhuo Wen's eyes were filled with battle intent as he took another step forward. With that step, he seemed to have crossed millions of miles and arrived in front of the second swordlight in an instant. Then, he slowly pulled out the iron sword from the scabbard again. Countless sword chi erupted from the scabbard, forming a violent storm of swords around Zhuo Wen's body, constantly sweeping and exploding in the surroundings. The storm of swords turned into a huge sword-shaped tombstone above Zhuo Wen's head. Charge! Zhuo Wen said softly. The sword-shaped tombstone broke through the air, following the second swordlight, and swept in front of Yang Yi in an instant. The sword chi of the sword-shaped tombstone was too wild. Wherever it passed, the void would explode. Yang Yi was best at the power of the void. When the surrounding void was destroyed by the sword-shaped tombstone, he could not escape. Zhon Bai's substandard divine weapon is really extraordinary. But can you, a guy in the late stage of the celestial immortal realm, pull out the fourth sword? Or, with your physical body and strength, can you withstand the powerful pressure of the fourth sword? Yang Yi kept retreating. His eyes fell on Zhuo Wen. He saw that Zhuo Wen's body was trembling, and blood was flowing out from the corner of his mouth. Although the power of a substandard divine weapon was great, there was a price to pay to use it. Anyone below the level of demigod would have to withstand the powerful pressure left by the original owner of the substandard divine weapon. The blood splash 5 steps had accompanied Zhon Bai for too long. Although the blood splash 5 steps had always been an ordinary item, and even a little insignificant, it was the weapon that had accompanied Zhon Bai for the longest time. It was because of this that this ordinary item became extraordinary. When Zhon Bai became a demigod, it finally absorbed a trace of star god power from the starry sky and became a substandard divine weapon. The blood splash 5 steps had great potential. If it continued to accompany Zhon Bai and Zhon Bai did not die, it could become a real divine weapon. But 10,000 years ago, Zhon Bai's fall completely covered this extraordinary ordinary item with dust. But today, Zhuo Wen felt the excitement of the blood splash 5 steps. This excitement was naturally revealed when the blood splash 5 steps followed Zhon Bai in battle 10,000 years ago. Although the one holding it now was not Zhon Bai but Zhuo Wen, the blood splash 5 steps weapon spirit could feel that its master had deliberately sealed it in between his eyebrows to wait for the fated one. And this fated one was Zhuo Wen in front of it. This fated one would carry its master's unfinished belief and complete the final battle. This was also the reason why Zhuo Wen could use a substandard divine weapon as a celestial immortal. However, 3 sword strikes were indeed the limit of what he could do now. If he forcefully used the 4th sword strike, his body would collapse and his soul would even be injured. Yang Yi's eyes were full of mockery. Then, he flicked his finger and took out a small knife that was a few feet long from his spiritual ring. Substandard divine weapon, Blade of the Void. You forced me to use my substandard divine weapon. You deserve to die. As he spoke, Yang Yi twisted his right hand and the small knife rotated in his hand. Then, it gradually disappeared into the void. When the second and third sword light appeared in front of Yang Yi, the small knife appeared again. Like a storm, it quickly circled around the 2 sword lights. While the small knife was circling around, black knife shadows were imprinted around the 2 sword lights. Then, as if time had stopped, the 2 sword lights were frozen in the void. Yang Yi stood proudly. He looked down at Zhuo Wen and mocked, can you still use the 4th sword? His voice was like thunder, exploding in the sky above the heavenly armor continent. At this moment, The remaining experts of the Middle-earth immortal realm and above were watching the battle between Zhuowen and Yang Yi with fear. Especially when they saw that Zhuowen was seriously injured after using the third sword, they were disappointed. That's too much. Brother Zhuo is only in the later stage of the heaven immortal realm. Even if he has a substandard divine weapon, the gap between him and a demigod is too big. Yuan Hongwen smiled bitterly. Zhuowen slowly raised his head and pointed his right hand between his eyebrows. Suddenly, the Fushi cauldron in his sea of consciousness began to tremble violently. Meanwhile, the He Tu and the Luo scroll slowly floated around Cheng Huang in the Fushi cauldron. Cheng Huang looked at Xiao He silently and smiled. It's time for me to complete my mission. As it spoke, an extremely terrifying and vast power emerged from the Fushi cauldron and began to merge into Zhuowen's body. At the top of the Fushi cauldron, a blurry figure appeared faintly. This figure was Cangjie's shadow, the creator of the Fushi cauldron. Cangjie looked at Xiao He with a smile and said, "Are you going to use my power so soon?" Xiao He's eyes were filled with sorrow. It stared blankly at the smiling Cangjie but did not know what to say. With a choked voice, it silently watched Cangjie's shadow gradually dissipate and merge into Zhuowen's meridians. Boom! In an instant, Zhuowen's aura skyrocketed and broke through the true immortal realm. Then, it reached the early stage of the true immortal realm, the middle stage, until it reached the peak of the true immortal realm. Moreover, after reaching the peak of the true immortal realm, the growth did not stop. Then, his aura jumped from the peak of the true immortal realm to the demigod realm. The moment his aura reached the level of the demigod realm, Zhuowen's right hand gripped the hilt of his sword tightly. Then, he quickly drew the fourth sword. When the fourth sword was drawn, countless stars fell. It was as if this sword could cut through the sky and reverse the galaxy. At the moment when the fourth sword was drawn, Zhuowen quickly sheathed his iron sword and immediately drew the fifth sword. When the last two sword lights appeared, the entire sky was filled with a terrifying white light, illuminating the surroundings as if it was daytime. The sneer on Yang Yi's face suddenly froze. The speed of the fourth and fifth sword lights was too fast. In an instant, they blasted on the defense of the Blade of the Void. Then, the Blade of the Void flew out and was caught by Yang Yi. The first two sword lights and the last two sword lights joined together and instantly approached the space where Yang Yi was. Then, an extremely terrifying explosion erupted. A series of horrifying sounds of explosions rang out continuously. At the moment when the four sword lights exploded at the same time, Zhuowen took a step forward. As if he had teleported, he swept to the side of Yang Tianwei, who was entangled with Shiji. Yang Tianwei naturally saw Zhuo when rushing over as well. She was already exhausted from running for her life under Shiji's attacks. Now that Zhuo Wen, whose aura had skyrocketed, had joined the fray, how could she possibly defend herself? Therefore, she made a prompt decision. Immediately, she used the power of deduction to calculate the next path of survival. However, she soon found that no matter how she tried to deduce, she found that there was no way for her to escape. Fight. Yang Tianwei's eyes were resolute. She suddenly threw out countless corpses from her spiritual ring. These corpses were collected from the Serene Corpse impasse over the years. 1,000 corpse lock. There were thousands of corpses surrounding Yang Tianwei. Under the power of her seal, they were arranged into the shape of a chain. At the center of the chain was a huge dragon corpse. This dragon corpse was hundreds of thousands of feet long. It had black wings on its back and its pitch-black scales were shining with a metallic luster. Damn it! Isn't this my corpse? What did this little girl do to this dragon lord's dragon corpse? What a bastard! Seeing the dragon corpse in the middle of the countless corpses, Xiao He in the sea of consciousness immediately flew into a rage. Zhuowen narrowed his eyes and said in a deep voice, "I will help you get this corpse." As he spoke, Zhuowen pointed with his right finger and used the immortal technique Finger of Hell. With the support of Cangjie's power, he had the power of a demigod for a quarter of an hour. Relying on the power of a demigod, the Finger of Hell he used was much more terrifying than before. The gate of reincarnation rotated continuously. Then, the circular gate slowly opened. Those corpses were all swallowed by the gate of reincarnation. They could not even attack. In an instant, except for the dragon corpse, all the other corpses were swallowed by the gate of reincarnation. When Zhuowen approached the dragon corpse suddenly opened its eyes and swallowed Zhuowen. Zhuowen stepped on the ground with his right foot and instantly retreated. Then, he released Xiao He. "Boy, leave this dragon corpse to me. She dared to make my corpse like this. I will not let this little girl go." Chapter 1871. Abrupt change. Under Xiao He's control, the dragon corpse was completely useless. After Xiao He freed the dragon corpse from Yang Tianwei's control, it returned to Zhuowen's sea of consciousness, while the dragon corpse was stored in Zhuowen's spirit ring. Yang Tianwei's eyes were gloomy. She didn't expect the 1,000-corpse lock to be broken so quickly. In shock, she quickly retreated. Unfortunately, Zhuowen was too strong at this moment. It had far exceeded her deduction ability. Not long after she retreated, Zhuowen had appeared behind her at some point. Yang Tianwei suddenly turned around. When she saw Zhuowen's cold and emotionless gaze, she couldn't help but take a few steps back. However, after taking a few steps back, she was shocked to find that a force like the might of the heavens surrounded her body, imprisoning her and making it impossible for her to move. Zhuowen's sword finger instantly landed between Yang Tianwei's eyebrows. "Wait!" Yang Tianwei cried out in alarm. Unfortunately, Zhuowen didn't care about Yang Tianwei's cry. Instead, his right hand formed a sword finger and instantly tapped on her forehead. Demigod energy poured in, causing Yang Tianwei to spit out a mouthful of blood. Her face was pale and bloodless. Zhuowen slowly pulled out a talisman from her forehead. "No. I don't want to be as weak and sickly as before. Only this origin talisman can improve my physique and allow me to obtain great power." "You can't do this," Yang Tianwei cried out crazily. It could be said that everything she did was to change her physique. This had already become her obsession. Now, Zhuowen had taken away the origin talisman from her body, which was equivalent to returning her to her original state. This was something she couldn't tolerate. Zhuowen didn't care about Yang Tianwei at all. His gaze was focused on the origin talisman he took out from Yang Tianwei's sea of consciousness. He could feel the aura of the 6 saint talismans: Wind Thunder, Ice Flame, Beast Envoy, Immortality, Revolving Stab, and Heavy Shield. On the other hand, Zhuowen had the Blood Sacrifice, Wind Lightning, Ice Flame, and King Blade Saint Talisman. Including Yang Tianwei, he had a total of 8 saint talismans. The only thing missing was the Prediction Saint Talisman. Where's the Prediction Saint Talisman? Zhuowen's origin talisman was as sharp as a knife. Yang Tianwei glanced at Zhuowen indifferently and mocked, "Do you think I'll give that thing to you?" Yang Tianwei. "Dream, once I hand, I'll be dead. Is that right?" Zhuowen's eyes narrowed dangerously. Just as he was about to continue interrogating Yang Tianwei, not far away, the 4 sword lights suddenly exploded. Yang Yi stepped out with a gloomy look and headed straight for Zhuowen. Zhuowen's face changed slightly. He immediately put Yang Tianwei into his spirit ring. After exhorting Shi Ji, he turned to face Yang Yi, who was rushing straight at him. At this moment, Yang Yi was quite embarrassed. His eyes were full of anger. It was the first time in his life that he was so embarrassed. He couldn't accept it. "I'll kill you today." Yang Yi's killing intent soared. He waved his sleeve and the blade of the void suddenly swept out like a boomerang. The moment it swept out, the surrounding starry sky began to collapse. Looking at the blade of the void that was constantly spinning towards him, Zhuowen's face turned solemn. He could feel an extremely powerful and shocking aura from the blade of the void. Zhuowen stared at the blade of the void that was spinning towards him. His right hand tightly grasped the hilt of the sheathed iron sword. A surge of aura soared up in Zhuowen's body. A formless ripple flowed from his palm into the scabbard. Instantly, the aura that surrounded Zhuowen's body increased explosively by around 2 times. On the other hand, Zhuowen's robe and black hair fluttered in the wind. He had imbued the power of Tao intent onto the substandard divine artifact, Bloody 5 Steps. This was the first time he had tried it. Although Dao Will could increase his overall strength, Zhuowen's demigod power was Tsungji's power after all, not his own. Moreover, the blood splash 5 steps wasn't his own weapon. Therefore, he wasn't sure whether Dao Will would have any effect on it. However, the moment Zhuowen used the Dao intent, he found that the Dao intent could actually increase the power of Tsungji and the substandard god weapon blood splashing 5 steps. Yang Yi also noticed the sudden change in Zhuowen's aura. He slowly narrowed his eyes. However, his attention wasn't completely focused on Zhuowen. Instead, it fell on Master Devourer and God of Heaven Ganj, who were fighting not far away. Clang! Zhuowen slowly pulled out the iron sword. This time, the aura generated by the first sword he pulled out was too powerful. It was far stronger than the first sword he pulled out before. At the same time, Zhuowen took a step forward. Instantly, the terrifying aura increased again. It was as if countless volcanoes were erupting. The blade of the void was extremely fast. In an instant, it was already several dozen zhong away from Zhuowen. This distance was too short for an expert like Zhuowen. At the same time, Zhuowen was about to pull out the first sword enhanced by Dao Will. Whoosh! All of a sudden, the blade of void spun abruptly, drawing an arc in the air a few hundred feet in front of it, and then swept in another direction. Zhuowen's body trembled. He stared at the blade of the void in surprise. Soon after, he discovered that the corner of Yang Yi's mouth was curled up in a mocking smile. This smile was very strange. It actually gave Zhuowen a chilling feeling. It was as if Yang Yi's smile was hiding a chilly wind, which made Zhuowen feel extremely uncomfortable. At the same time, Zhuowen's eyes also fell on the trajectory of the blade of the void. He discovered that the blade of the void was heading towards the place where Master Devourer and God of Heaven Ganj were fighting. What is Yang Yi doing? This void blade is just a sub-god artifact. It shouldn't be of any help in the battle between God Warspear and God Devourer, right? Zhuowen frowned slightly. He really couldn't figure out what Yang Yi's purpose was. Master Devourer and Ganj also noticed the approaching blade of the void. Master Devourer sneered and said mockingly, "An ant trying to shake a tree? How laughable." Ganj, on the other hand, frowned. He clearly didn't understand why Yang Yi suddenly intervened. However, he also knew that Yang Yi threw the blade of the void to help him. Unfortunately, Yang Yi's cultivation was only at the peak of the demigod realm. He couldn't help much. The blade of the void was extremely fast. In an instant, it reached the battlefield where the two were fighting. However, the two didn't pay it any attention. Whether it was Master Devourer or Ganj, they were both early heavenly god realm experts. This divine tool really couldn't affect their battle. Bang! When the blade of the void was about 100 zhong away from Master Devourer and Ganj, it suddenly shattered. Within the shattered fragments of the blade of the void, a blood-red light instantly traversed 100 zhong. Before anyone could react, the blood-red light pierced through Ganj's chest and stopped there. Poochie! Ganj spat out a mouthful of blood as he stared at his chest. There was an unknown blood-red pattern on his chest. The pattern looked like a rose. It was bright and dazzling. When it bloomed, it was extremely dazzling. God-slaying withering needle, Ganj retreated dozens of steps as he stared at the pattern on his chest. His face was filled with disbelief and doubt. He stared at Yang Yi, who wasn't far away, and the doubt in his eyes grew. He didn't know why Yang Yi had the god-slaying withering needle. He also didn't know why Yang Yi would attack him. Perhaps the others didn't know about the god-slaying withering needle, but Ganj was very clear about it. It was an extremely evil hidden weapon that was specially used to deal with heavenly gods. Once the needle pierced through a heavenly god's body, the sealing power within the needle would prevent the heavenly god's natal star from continuing to provide him with star god energy. Furthermore, the rose pattern on Ganji's chest would wither with the passage of time. When all the petals withered, it would be the time of Ganj's death. Zhuowen was also puzzled. He couldn't figure out why Yang Yi would do such a thing. Especially when he saw the god-slaying withering needle piercing through Ganj's body, it made him even more fearful. He had personally experienced how strong a heavenly god was. At least, It wasn't someone he could fight against at his current level. If Yang Yi used this hidden weapon to deal with him, Zhuoan, he was afraid that he, Zhuoan, would suffer a grievance. Not only Zhuoan, Shiji, Fushi, and everyone from the Heavenly Armor continent were stunned. Obviously, they didn't expect Yang Yi, who was supposed to be on the same side, to attack Heavenly God Ganj. Why? Ganj found it difficult to breathe. The god-slaying withering needle had almost completely cut off the connection between his natal star and his natal star. He only felt that his body was getting weaker and weaker. However, he was even more puzzled about why Yang Yi would do such a thing. Although he addressed Yang Yi as his son in front of outsiders, that wasn't the case. Yang Yi's origin was quite mysterious. When he was banished to the extraterritorial starry sky, he met Yang Yi. At that time, Yang Yi guided him to the vicinity of the Heavenly Armor Star. It was then that he discovered the Heavenly Armor Star. Of course, Yang Yi had offered him a generous reward to refine the Heavenly Armor Star and help him break through to the Heavenly God Realm. Yang Yi's reward was too generous. At that time, he didn't refuse and agreed to let Yang Yi take out the star core inside the Heavenly Armor Star. However, he didn't expect a series of events that Ganj would never forget. You did all of this on purpose. What? What do you want? Ganj stared at Yang Yi and said. Yang Yi smiled faintly and said, I just want to watch a good show. If it's too evenly matched, it won't be a good show. A good show needs ups and downs, doesn't it? Ganj still wanted to say something, but Master Devourer seized the opportunity and rushed in front of Ganj. The tentacles on his head instantly shot out and wrapped around Ganj. Ganj wanted to resist, but unfortunately, he was too weak after being hit by the god-slaying withering needle. He couldn't resist Master Devourer's tentacles. Master Devourer gave Yang Yi a deep look. This was an excellent opportunity. Naturally, he wouldn't let go of this opportunity to devour Ganj. Master Devourer opened his mouth and spat out a black whirlpool. Then, Ganj was swallowed by the black whirlpool. The taste of a heavenly god is really not bad. Master Devourer patted his stomach and looked at Yang Yi. He smiled coldly and said, Since you helped me devour this heavenly god Ganj, I won't devour you. I'll let you die a good death. After saying that, Master Devourer waved his right hand casually. A terrifying wave of heaven and earth lore condensed and formed a giant hand that grabbed at Yang Yi. Chapter 1872. The mysterious Yang Yi had no intention of resisting. He just stared at the giant hand indifferently. Swoosh. The giant hand grabbed Yang Yi and pulled him in front of Master Devourer. Then, Master Devourer opened his mouth, and a black vortex appeared, swallowing Yang Yi whole. Strong in appearance but weak in reality, hey, Master Devourer sneered. At first, when Yang Yi used the god-destroying withering needle to attack Heavenly God Ganj, he thought that Yang Yi wasn't simple. But now, it seemed that he was overthinking. Yang Yi's strongest skill was the god-destroying withering needle. After using it, he had no other skills. Something's wrong. Suddenly, Master Devourer turned around and saw Yang Yi looking at him indifferently. You're still here? Master Devourer furrowed his brows, his eyes sinister. He swallowed Yang Yi again, swallowing him into the black vortex. But soon, Master Devourer saw Yang Yi's figure behind him again. Instantly, Master Devourer's face turned ugly, and fear appeared in his eyes. Yang Yi's strange performance had made him shudder. The unknown was fear. Although Master Devourer was strong, he was still panic-stricken when encountering a phenomenon that couldn't be explained with common sense. In the distance, Zhuoan and Shiji landed on the sifting smoke whale. The battle between Fu Shi and Devourer had come to an end. Devourer looked at Fu Shi with fear. He retreated to a spot not far from Yang Yi, staring at Fu Shi coldly. What's going on? Fu Shi's aura was weak. Although he had fought Devourer, Devourer didn't gain any advantage. Instead, Fu Shi's condition wasn't good. However, Fu Shi's condition wasn't very good. His strength was closely related to his lifespan. The more he fought, the more his lifespan would decrease. When all of his lifespan was exhausted, the Fu Shi would also die. Zhuoan shook his head. He didn't know what was going on. When Yang Yi attacked Heavenly God Ganj, he was puzzled. Now, Master Devourer had swallowed Yang Yi twice, but Yang Yi was still alive and standing in front of them. "You still want to swallow me?" Yang Yi said with a faint smile. He didn't know why, but when he saw Yang Yi's expression, Master Devourer's pupils shrank, and his heart shivered. Master Devourer wasn't a fool. Instead, he was very smart. This Yang Yi was so strange that he could see some clues. "You want to protect them? Also, why did you help me kill Heavenly God Ganji?" Master Devourer pointed at the people on the sifting smoke whale. Yang Yi smiled faintly. "I once made a bet with a certain someone. I bet with him that the only life planet in the extraterrestrial starry sky would be able to survive. I bet that this planet will be destroyed, and my opponent bet that this planet will survive. Originally, if you and Ganji didn't fight each other, you could join hands and destroy this heavenly armor planet. Unfortunately, the two of you are actually fighting endlessly over there. As for me, because of the bet, I can't act as I please. Thus, I can only sacrifice Ganji." Master Devourer stared at Yang Yi. When he saw Yang Yi reply slowly, he felt a chill in his heart. Heavenly God Ganj was strong enough to destroy the Heavenly God Ganj, right? Why did you choose me? Master Devourer was still puzzled. Yang Yi's smile became brighter. Devourer is one of the strongest races in the universe. His innate talents are extraordinary, and is very rare. You've swallowed the flesh and blood of an adult devourer. You've inherited his devouring ability. You're a precious species. Isn't it a pity to kill you? Ganj is just an early heavenly god realm expert. It doesn't matter if he dies. The Sakyamuni territory doesn't lack heavenly gods, said Yang Yi indifferently. Yang Yi and Master Devourer didn't try to conceal their conversation. Everyone on the heavenly god whale heard them clearly. Zhuoan furrowed his brows. Yang Yi was too mysterious. Initially, he thought that Yang Yi was heavenly god Ganj's son. However, from Yang Yi's actions and tone, he couldn't tell that Yang Yi had such a relationship with heavenly god Ganj. Moreover, Yang Yi's last sentence was full of confidence. It was as if he didn't put that powerful heavenly god in his eyes. Zhuoan couldn't understand. After all, Yang Yi's cultivation was only at the peak of the demigod realm. Why did he have the courage to say such a thing? Moreover, Master Devourer's devouring ability could even devour heavenly god Ganj. However, Yang Yi was so strange that even Master Devourer couldn't do anything to him. These strange signs were enough to show that Yang Yi's origin wasn't simple. Moreover, it wasn't the first time that Zhuoan had heard about the Sakyamuni territory. Heavenly god Ganj had also said that they came from the Sakyamuni territory. Before that, when he comprehended the Tao will on the ancient boulder in the War of Gods, the old man in Taoist robes had told him to go to the Heaven territory to find him. However, the Heaven territory wasn't called the Sakyamuni territory. It was called the Huaxia Heaven territory. Although Zhuoan was unfamiliar with the so-called Heaven territory, he knew that the Heaven territory was probably much larger than a planet. However, he had never entered the Heaven territory, so he didn't know much about it. If there's a chance in the future, I'll have to make a trip to the Huaxia Heaven territory. Zhuoan shook his head. However, his eyes were extremely vigilant as he stared at Master Devourer in the starry sky. Master Devourer's cultivation was at the early heavenly god realm. His cultivation and battle prowess were enough to destroy the entire heavenly armor planet and slaughter all the cultivators on the heavenly armor continent. Master Devourer stared coldly at Yang Yi. From Yang Yi's last sentence, he understood that Yang Yi was treating him as a rare species. After all, he had a part of Devourer's bloodline and a complete devouring ability. However, Master Devourer also knew that Yang Yi was too strange. With his current strength, he couldn't kill Yang Yi. I've devoured the heavenly god Ganj, so I'm not far from the mid-heavenly god realm. If I devour the heavenly armor planet as well, I might be able to advance to the mid-heavenly god realm. At that time, I don't believe that I can't kill Yang Yi. Master Devourer's eyes flickered. Yang Yi's cultivation was only at the peak demigod realm. In Master Devourer's eyes, Such a cultivation wasn't a threat to him. The only thing he hated was that Yang Yi's ghostly and strange movement skill allowed him to evade his devouring ability time and time again. Zhuowen couldn't see through Yang Yi. If Zhuowen had displayed such a terrifying movement skill from the beginning, Master Devourer knew that even if he had the strength of a demigod and Zhon Bai's blood-splashing 5 steps, he wouldn't be Yang Yi's opponent. Moreover, Master Devourer also noticed that Yang Yi's movement skill was similar to the legendary earth shrinking technique. It was said that this was a movement skill that was much more terrifying than greater teleportation. Even for a divine transformation realm expert, such a skill was something that could only be found by chance. In Zhuowen's impression, it was a skill that only existed in legends. Zhuowen was even more puzzled. Who was the person that Yang Yi had made a bet with? Moreover, Zhuowen was disgusted by the fact that Yang Yi had used the countless living beings on the heavenly armor planet as his bet. Whether it was Yang Yi or the person that Yang Yi had made a bet with, they had completely disregarded the countless living beings on the heavenly armor planet. This made Zhuowen extremely angry. At this moment, Master Devourer had made up his mind to devour the heavenly armor planet first. He would deal with Yang Yi after his cultivation improved. Whoosh! Master Devourer stomped his right foot and flew towards the heavenly armor continent. I'll kill all of you ants first. Otherwise, when I devour the heavenly armor planet later, you ants will give me a headache if you hinder me. Master Devourer's shrill voice reverberated. He was extremely fast and his entire body was like a cannonball. He streaked across the starry sky in a dazzling trajectory like a falling meteor. What should we do? In an instant, the countless heavenly armor continent martial artists in the Luo Yangjing were in a panic. Although they had entered the Luo Yangjing's inner world, the black-veiled woman had deliberately made it so that they could see everything that was happening in the sky. Everyone panicked when they saw that the terrifying Master Devourer was going to target them. They did not know what to do. I'll stop Master Devourer. You guys go with the Luo Yangjing first, Zhuowen said in a low voice. He took a step forward and leaped into the starry sky. Then, his Dao Will surged into the scabbard and he pulled out the iron sword. A sword light that was as blazing as the sun streaked across the starry sky and instantly landed on Master Devourer. Interesting. This brat has comprehended the power of Dao Will. He has enhanced the power of a demigod and a substandard divine weapon to such a powerful level. However, the gap between him and me is too big. Master Devourer sneered. He clenched his right hand and an invisible power of rules spread out in his palm, forming an invisible and transparent sphere. Bang! When the sword light reached the transparent sphere, there was a rumbling explosion. The sword light stopped in front of the transparent sphere. The moment Zhuowen swung the first sword, he swung the remaining 4 swords in a spurt of energy. The demigod power that Songjie had passed on to him could only last for 15 minutes. Zhuowen could feel that Songjie's power was slowly dissipating. Therefore, he did not dare to waste time. After swinging the sword 4 times, Zhuowen summoned the blood immortal from the spiritual ring. He then handed the spiritual ring to her and said in a low voice, "Take my spiritual ring and go to the Luo Yangjing. Escape with everyone. We can't stay here for long." The blood immortal looked at Zhuowen silently and nodded solemnly. Then, she turned into a bloody light and went to the Luo Yangjing. At this moment, Fushi on the Luo Yangjing also wanted to go out and help Zhuowen. However, he was stopped by the blood immortal. "Let's go quickly. Master will be fine. He has a blood substitution elixir. This elixir can replace him to die once. Now, the elixir is in my spiritual ring. Even if Master dies this time, he will be reborn in the spiritual ring. We should run as far as possible," said the blood immortal urgently. The black-veiled woman's beautiful eyes shrunk. She was worried about Zhuowen's safety, so she did not immediately control the Luo Yangjing to leave. Now that she heard the blood immortal's explanation, she controlled the Luo Yangjing without hesitation and rushed into the starry sky. Chapter 1873. Calculating the Luo Yangjing was extremely fast. In just a blink of an eye, it turned into a ghostly shadow in the starry sky. Although the Luo Yang Jing's speed wasn't as fast as the star disk, it wasn't much slower. At this moment, Master Devourer was enveloped by the 5 rays of sword light. Under the support of the Tao will, the might of these 5 rays of sword light was much stronger than before. Moreover, there were 5 rays of sword light shooting out at the same time. Even Master Devourer couldn't break free completely in a short period of time. As for Yang Yi, he was floating not far from the starry sky. He indifferently gazed at the Luo Yang Jing, but he didn't chase after it. Instead, he gently patted Devour. "Little guy, I'll leave the Luo Yang Jing to you." Devour looked at Yang Yi. Although it didn't want to accept Yang Yi's order, the familiar feeling in its mind made it obey Yang Yi's order. Swoosh. Although Devour hadn't reached adulthood yet, its size could be compared to the Luo Yang Jing. Devour's genes were much stronger than the Luo Yang Jing's. Its speed in the starry sky was much faster than the Luo Yang Jing's. After receiving Yang Yi's order, it only took Devour a quarter of an hour to catch up with the Luo Yang Jing. "Leave Devour to me. You guys go." Fuxi's eyes darkened. His body flashed, dashing toward Devour, who was roaring toward him. Fuxi, Shiji couldn't bear to watch. At this moment, Fuxi's entire body was shrouded in death aura. His lifespan was constantly decreasing. If he continued to fight, his remaining lifespan would eventually be exhausted and Fuxi would also die. "What's wrong with dying? Everyone has to die. I don't want to live an ignoble life. I'm willing to die fighting." The moment I got out of the coffin, I made up my mind. Hovering in the starry sky, Fuxi turned around and smiled at Shiji and the others. His face was free and easy. Shiji's eyes immediately turned red. It was not just Shiji. All the people from the Heavenly Armor continent who were watching from the fog whale could not help but feel their hearts ache. Zhuoan. Fuxi, Yuan Hongwen's eyes were bloodshot as he clenched his fists tightly. He really wanted to go out and help, even if he had to fight to the death like Fuxi. However, he was too weak. He did not even have the qualifications to enter the starry sky, let alone fight. Therefore, he could only stare blankly at the battle between Zhuoan and Fuxi. This sullen feeling caused Yuan Hongwen to feel extremely uncomfortable in his heart. Not only Yuan Hongwen, but everyone in Luo Yanjing's inner world also felt extremely aggrieved. The Heavenly Armor continent was their home, but they were forced to flee like stray dogs. Moreover, because they were too weak, they couldn't even leave the starry sky. It could be said that they didn't even have the qualifications to die in battle. This kind of incompetence and powerlessness made everyone feel sad from the bottom of their hearts. Rumble. Suddenly, the Luo Yang whale roared. Everyone felt the world inside the Luo Yang whale constantly shaking, as if the world inside the Luo Yang whale was shaking like a bottle. Everyone's eyes were filled with fear and panic. What happened? Yuan Hongwen frowned slightly. Immediately, he looked through the Luo Yang whale's line of sight and fell on the starry sky in front of the Luo Yang whale. He found that the starry sky in front of the Luo Yang whale was distorting and collapsing. It was as if the starry sky in front of the Luo Yang whale was folding like a piece of paper, blocking the Luo Yang whale's way. "It's Yang Yi. You guys be careful. I will control the Luo Yang whale to break through the distorted starry sky in front of us." The black-veiled woman's beautiful eyes were dignified. She made a seal with both hands and gently patted the Luo Yang whale under her feet. Then, a strange pattern appeared on the Luo Yang whale's scalp. Whoosh! This strange pattern was in the shape of a sharp quadrangle, like a sharp sword without a hilt. As soon as the sword pattern appeared, the water spout on the whale's head abruptly spewed out extremely dense smoke. The smoke was like a substance, condensing in front of the Luo Yang whale's head and forming a sharp sword tip. Bang! The Luo Yang whale was extremely fast. In an instant, it hit the distorted starry sky in front of it. Then, there was an extremely harsh explosion. The impact was so powerful that even the Luo Yang whale made a sound like a sorrowful cry. Then, its huge body began to shake violently. Everyone in the Luo Yang whale's inner world was affected by this strong shaking force. Some people could not stand steadily and fell down. Many buildings in the small world also collapsed under this violent shaking. Break! The black-veiled woman was extremely calm. She changed the seal with both hands again and patted the Luo Yang whale's body. The Luo Yang whale released even more terrifying smoke, which gathered in the Luo Yang whale's head and made the sharp air more condensed and fierce. Bang! With a muffled sound, the distorted starry sky in front of them was shattered. The Luo Yang whale, with a somewhat shaky body, rushed out of the countless void fragments. However, at the moment when the Luo Yang whale rushed out of the distorted starry sky, the shattered void fragments regrouped and turned into a hand of nothingness. The target of this hand of nothingness was the blood immortal on the Luo Yang whale. This hand of nothingness was too fast, and the timing was very precise. The moment the Luo Yang whale rushed out was also the moment when everyone in the Luo Yang whale was the most relaxed. The blood immortal did not even have time to react before the hand of nothingness grabbed her and pulled her into the shattered starry sky. "Oh no!" Shiji shouted and immediately released the Buddha demon body. He squeezed his hands and condensed a Buddhist commandment blade and a devil blade with Buddhist power and devil power respectively. The two blades chopped out, cutting out two different colors of gold and black in the starry sky and bombarding the hand of nothingness. The illusory hand was very clever. It suddenly threw the blood immortal away like a piece of trash. At the same time, the Buddhist commandment blade and the devil blade chopped at the same time and cut off the hand of nothingness. Shiji and the black-veiled woman's faces were extremely ugly. Shiji's attack was decisive enough, but the hand of nothingness was even more decisive and fast. It was almost impossible for Shiji and the black-veiled woman to attack again. After all, the Luo Yang whale and the blood immortal were moving in opposite directions. Even if it was only for a moment, the distance between them was extremely far. The Luo Yang whale wanted to turn around, but it was too late. Shiji and the black-veiled woman were not demigod experts, so it was almost impossible for them to travel through the starry sky. Even if they managed to get out, they could only fly for a short while and their lives would be in danger. Moreover, the hand of nothingness did not know whether it was intentional or not, but the hand of nothingness sent the blood immortal flying in the direction of the battle between Fushi and the infant devourer. Fushi frowned slightly. Of course, he noticed the blood immortal flying in the opposite direction. The blood immortal had Zhuowen's spiritual ring, and she said that there was a resurrection treasure in the spiritual ring for Zhuowen. If something happened to the blood immortal, Zhuowen would be in trouble. Thinking of this, Fushi gritted his teeth and gave up on the infant devourer. Instead, he flew in the direction of the blood immortal. Roar! The starry sky around the infant devourer suddenly collapsed. Then, the infant devourer disappeared from where it was. It actually came out of the starry sky beside the blood immortal before Fushi. It opened its mouth and spat out a black whirlpool, swallowing the blood immortal. Fushi was stunned. His eyes instantly turned red. The blood immortal was swallowed, and Zhuowen's resurrection was hopeless. His sacrifice was in vain. Die! Fushi roared. The power of destruction in his body surged out. His entire body was covered by the power of destruction, and his figure became hazy. Fushi almost used his life to activate the shattering scripture, as if he had become the source of destruction. The infant devourer roared. The starry sky around it shattered again, and its huge body disappeared again. When the infant devourer reappeared, it was not far from Yang Yi. Yang Yi. Fushi was burning with anger, and he stared at Yang Yi. While he was angry, Fushi was also very afraid. Of course, he had seen everything that had just happened. It was Yang Yi who had twisted the starry sky in front of the Luo Yang Jing. And it was also Yang Yi's intention that the starry sky in front of the Luo Yang Jing was easily shattered. His purpose was to make everyone on the Luo Yang Jing less nervous, which was enough to pave the way for him to set up a trap. Therefore, in the end, the huge hand formed by the shattered void fragments could so easily grab the blood immortal and throw her to the other hidden hand that it had placed on the infant devourer. This was a series of traps. Yang Yi's purpose was not to stop the Luo Yang Jing, but the blood immortal. To be more precise, it was Zhuowen's spiritual ring on the blood immortal. Although Yang Yi did not know that Zhuowen had the blood substitution elixir that could resurrect, it did not mean that he was a fool. From the change in expression of the black-veiled woman, Shiji, and the others, he could see some clues. And the blood immortal was probably the key to their change in expression. After all, Zhuowen was only a demigod, but Devour was already a divine realm expert. Although Zhuowen had the power of Dao Will, the gap was too big. Anyone with a discerning eye could see that Zhuowen's action was like a moth flying into a flame. But Zhuowen did not even think about it. He took the initiative to stop Devour, let the blood immortal out, and gave the spiritual ring to her. Yang Yi smelled something unusual in the first place. That was why he had set up a series of traps just now. What a scheming person. The black-veiled woman and Shiji looked at each other and felt a chill in their hearts. They had been cultivating for a long time. It was not that they had never seen scheming people, but it was the first time that they had seen someone as scheming as Yang Yi. And the series of actions that Yang Yi had done before made the black-veiled woman and the others feel even more unfathomable. They could not figure out what Yang Yi's purpose was. Was it really like what he said before? Did he just want to watch a good show? Now, I want to see if that brat Zhuowen will still be able to remain calm in the face of his master's attack. Yang Yi smiled as he looked at Zhuowen, who was still facing Devour in the distant starry sky. Bang! 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 A muffled sound rang out from Zhuowen's location. Kai Hu, who had been surrounded by 5 consecutive sword lights, suddenly leaped out, and the 5 sword lights collapsed with a loud bang. Yang Yi. Chapter 1874. Level 2 Dao Intent. The might of your divine artifact isn't bad. It was actually able to put me in such a sorry state. But as far as I know, this should be your strongest trump card, right? Even your strongest trump card can't cause any damage to me. What qualifications do you have to stand before me? Master Devourer sneered. There were 5 hideous wounds on its body. These 5 wounds were obviously caused by the 5 sword rays from before. However, these 5 wounds were healing at a speed visible to the naked eye. Zhuowen's eyes were extremely sharp. Although Master Devourer's face was filled with indifference, he was still able to detect the trace of exhaustion in its eyes. Obviously, it wasn't easy for Master Devourer to deal with the 5 sword rays from before. After all, Zhonbai's bloody 5 steps wasn't an ordinary substandard divine artifact. Coupled with the support of Dao Intent, its might was extremely impressive. Moreover, Master Devourer was too careless when it dealt with the 5 sword rays. It didn't take the 5 sword rays seriously, so it suffered a loss. Although Master Devourer didn't seem to care about Zhuowen, it was actually burning with rage in its heart. It wished for nothing more than to kill Zhuowen immediately. Die! Master Devourer bounced off its legs and shot towards Zhuowen like a meteor. It clenched its right hand and condensed the energy of the laws of heaven and earth into a spear. It swept towards Zhuowen's chest. Zhuowen's face turned pale. After Master Devourer suffered a loss, it didn't hold back anymore. It attacked with its full strength and was determined to kill with a single strike. Use blood splashing 5 steps again. Zhuowen sighed faintly and revealed a trace of bitterness in his eyes. He clearly felt that Sungjie's demigod energy was gradually disappearing, and the side effects of executing bloody 5 steps had already taken effect in his body. He was very clear that if he executed bloody 5 steps again, even a saint physique at perfection would probably collapse. Moreover, it was very likely that he would meet his end because of this. However, he already had no other way out. Especially when he saw that the 5 sword rays from bloody 5 steps supported by Dao Intent could really affect Master Devourer, he had already planned to execute bloody 5 steps again. Thinking of this, Zhuowen slowly stepped forward. His right hand gripped the hilt of the sword on his left, and his eyes suddenly became fierce and resolute. Since he had already made up his mind, Zhuowen would not back down, even if it meant losing his life. Clang! Zhuowen's resolute belief and will to face death with equanimity made his thoughts grow at the speed of light. A mysterious concept slowly lingered around Zhuowen's body. This profound concept was extremely mysterious. Like a stone falling into the water, it actually spread out invisible circular ripples in all directions. Moreover, this formless ring-shaped ripple was becoming denser and more intense. In an instant, the space around Zhuo when in an area of 30,000 m, 300,000 m, and 10,000 m was suddenly filled with this shapeless ring-shaped ripple. It was as if the surrounding space had become a calm water surface at this moment, and Zhuoan had become the stone that caused the ripples. Master Devourer's gaze was ferocious and terrifying. It bared its fangs, and the aura of its entire body surged out. The powerful aura that belonged to a heavenly god was enough to crush a true immortal realm cultivator to death. However, the instant it stepped into the 300-meter radius around Zhuoan, the formless ripple suddenly filled its surroundings, causing its expression to change slightly. The aura of the formless ripple caused Master Devourer to be fearful, and its heart thumped wildly. It was as if the formless ripple could completely affect its state of mind, causing it to involuntarily stop moving. Yang Yi, who was originally calm and composed, couldn't help but constrict his pupils. His expression was gloomy as he stared at Zhuoan, whose formless ripples were becoming more and more violent. He muttered in a low voice, the concept of Tao intent, in the heavenly domain of Huaxia, which was extremely far away from the starry sky, there was an inconspicuous Daoist temple within an inconspicuous hill. Within the Daoist temple, a Daoist quietly knelt on a cushion before the temple's entrance, and another figure similarly knelt before him. This figure was a middle-aged man. His hair was disheveled, and he looked like a beggar. His eyes were narrowed, and there was a wisp of drunkenness on his cheeks. A red wooden chessboard was placed before the two of them, and the two of them were silently playing chess. Their surroundings were quiet and tranquil. Ding! The instant the Daoist placed his chess piece on the chessboard, he seemed to have sensed something, and the chess piece in his hand landed on the chessboard. His gaze rose slightly, and it fell onto the starry sky outside the Daoist temple. The middle-aged man with disheveled hair followed the Daoist's gaze and looked in the direction the Daoist was looking at. His eyes slowly narrowed, and he said in a low voice, "The energy of Tao intent. From the looks of it, someone is about to comprehend the second level of Tao intent." The middle-aged man lightly smiled and didn't pay too much attention to it. Because even though geniuses that had comprehended Tao intent were rare in the Huaxia Heaven territory, it wasn't like there weren't any. Under the enormous base, no matter how small the probability was, the number wasn't small. Of course, these were all geniuses that had comprehended the first level of Tao intent, whereas the number of geniuses that had comprehended the second level of Tao intent had decreased sharply. But it wasn't enough to draw the attention of an expert of his status. So, the middle-aged man was extremely puzzled by the Daoist's performance. The Daoist lightly picked up the chess piece that he had placed down and slowly placed it on the corresponding position on the chessboard, and then he laughed lightly. Second-level Tao intent really isn't rare in the Huaxia Heaven territory. But comprehending second-level Tao intent after comprehending the first level of Tao intent less than half a year ago is something I've never seen. Ding! The smile on the middle-aged man's face froze, and the chess piece in his hand fell onto the chessboard with a clang. After rolling a few times on the chessboard, it scattered to the side. The middle-aged man abruptly stood up, and he stared fixedly at the Daoist as he said in a low voice, "You've just comprehended the first level of Tao intent less than half a year ago, yet you've already touched the second level of Tao intent. Tai Ching, you're not joking, right?" The Daoist lightly smiled, and then he slowly placed down a chess piece and said, "You've already reached a dead end. How are you going to resolve this dead end?" The middle-aged man waved his hand and said, "You've won this round. Also, is what you said earlier true? Comprehending first and second level Tao intent in less than half a year? This is too terrifying, and I've never seen such a thing." The Daoist lightly smiled and said, "This is the first time I've seen it as well. This little fellow has given me quite a pleasant surprise." "Who exactly is this little fellow you're talking about? This kind of genius should be brought back to the Huaxia Heaven territory to focus on nurturing. This kind of peerless talent can't be buried." The middle-aged man had a rather impatient temper as he spoke. "The Tao is natural, so why do we have to do it deliberately? This kid was able to have such good fortune because he went with the flow. If we did it deliberately, I'm afraid there would be many restrictions on him, and it wouldn't be beautiful." The Daoist spoke indifferently. However, the middle-aged man refused and said, But we can't just leave this kid outside like this. Think about it, our Huaxia heaven territory is currently the weakest among the 8 heavens. If this kind of genius is kidnapped by the other heavens, it'll be too late for us to cry. The Daoist calmly said, kidnapped? They wouldn't dare, because this little fellow is the key to the bet between me and Sakyamuni. Before the outcome of this chess game between me and Sakyamuni is decided, no one dares to act recklessly. Sakyamuni? You actually made a bet with that perverted guy. What's the bet? The middle-aged man frowned and asked. Sakyamuni was the ruler of the Sakyamuni domain, and Sakyamuni domain was the strongest heaven territory among the 8 heavens. Its might was unparalleled, and it was deeply feared and revered by the other heavens. The middle-aged man didn't expect this Daoist to be so bold as to actually dare to make a bet with Sakyamuni. The bet is the mysterious and formidable Devour race in the starry sky. The Daoist smiled faintly, and then he continued, but I never expected that during the process of this bet, there would actually be a pleasant surprise that even I couldn't imagine. Devour? Didn't that thing go extinct before the era of the heaven territory? You were actually able to find the descendant of such a formidable race. The middle-aged man's pupils constricted into needles as he spoke in a low voice. Moreover, he knew that this so-called pleasant surprise was probably the little fellow who had comprehended the first-level Dao insight for less than half a year before comprehending the second-level Dao insight. Moreover, that fellow Sakyamuni's clone isn't too far away from that little fellow. You know that Sakyamuni is extremely competitive and won't easily admit defeat. Even if he uses some small tricks, he won't frown at all, said the Daoist indifferently. However, the middle-aged man couldn't sit still. How could this be? Sakyamuni's clone isn't too far away from that little fellow. If Sakyamuni wants to kill that little fellow, then that little fellow will definitely die. No, I won't believe in your bullsh*t Dao of nature. I have to go to the starry sky to take a look. I can't let that fellow Sakyamuni destroy such a genius. As he spoke, the middle-aged man stomped his right foot and instantly disappeared from the spot. If one were to look closely, this man's stomp had actually crossed countless planets and shuttled through the starry sky. It was as if the boundless starry sky was just a short path that could be traversed in a few steps. This was a divine ability that was of a much higher level than greater teleportation. Even a divine transformation expert might not be able to master this powerful divine ability, but it was as simple as eating a meal for this man. Yuqing is still so impatient. Since it's Yuqing's decision, then it's Dao of nature. The Daoist smiled and waved the horsetail whisk in his right hand. His entire body turned into a puff of green smoke and disappeared from the place. In the starry sky, Zhuoan slowly opened his eyes. At this moment, countless ripples appeared in his eyes. The mysterious power that was revealed by the Dao will was growing by the hundreds and thousands in Zhuoan's body. The Dao will has become stronger. Zhuoan's eyes were filled with confusion. Then, he slowly drew out his metal sword. Whoosh! The sword light was like the scorching sun. When the sword was drawn, the heavens and the earth cracked. The invisible ripples in the surroundings surged wildly like a tsunami. Master Devourer's pupils shrank to the size of needles. Although it was still the first sword light, for some reason, he felt an extremely strong sense of threat from it. That must have been an illusion. This kid's move is the same. He can't do anything to me. Master Devourer forcefully suppressed the uneasiness in his heart. He opened his mouth and spat out a black vortex. A powerful suction force surged out, as if it could swallow the entire starry sky. Rumble. Chapter 1875. The sixth sword. The moment the black vortex shattered, Master Devourer retreated without hesitation. His eyes were filled with fear as he stared at the powerful sword light that was shooting towards him. Swoosh! Devourer sword. Master Hu coldly snorted. The long tentacle above his head suddenly broke. After which, the long tentacle wriggled continuously. Finally, it turned into a huge black sword. The huge sword was extraordinary. Strangely, there were many black vortexes revolving around the huge sword. The black vortexes were thumb-sized and they were densely packed around the huge sword. The black vortexes were filled with an extremely powerful devouring power. At this moment, the sword light was right in front of Master Devourer. Master Devourer's eyes were cold. The sword finger on his right hand touched the Devourer sword's body. When his sword finger slowly slid to the tip of the sword, the Devourer sword shot out like an arrow from a bow, directly piercing the sword light. A terrifying explosion resounded. Although the sword light was powerful, the Devourer sword that Master Devourer had used was even more powerful. It destroyed the sword light directly. After destroying the sword light, Master Devourer heaved a sigh of relief. He thought that although Zhuowen's strength had increased tremendously, it was still not enough to compare to him. "What are you thinking about now?" Suddenly, a cold voice sounded. Master Devourer turned his head. His eyes narrowed as he realized that Zhuowen had appeared behind him without him noticing. Master Devourer wanted to ask why Zhuowen was so fast, but Zhuowen had already pulled out the iron sword with his right hand. With lightning speed, he slashed the sword a second time. After slashing the sword a second time, he did not stop and slashed the sword a third time. The two sword lights merged together and formed a huge sword light that crossed each other. In an instant, it was right in front of Master Devourer. Swoosh! The crossed sword light pierced through Master Devourer's body. Master Devourer's eyes narrowed as he was caught off guard. He was cut into 4 parts by the crossed sword light. Zhuowen's gaze was cold and indifferent as he gazed at the Master Devourer that had already been blasted into 4 pieces by the sword light, yet he wasn't particularly surprised. After all, after his Dao insight had advanced to the 2nd level, his overall strength had doubled. Originally, Zhuowen's blood splatter 5-step sword light, which was enhanced by the 1st level of Dao insight, was already able to injure Hu Fei. Now that his Dao insight had been upgraded to the 2nd level, the sword light he unleashed was completely capable of injuring Hu Fei. On top of that, the 2nd level Dao insight had boosted Zhuowen's speed even further. It had even surpassed Master Devourer's own speed. This was also the reason why Master Devourer didn't notice Zhuowen when Zhuowen arrived behind him. Instead, he was struck by Zhuowen's 2 sword lights. The Master Devourer, which had been cut into 4 parts by the sword light, formed 4 balls of black fog. They kept wriggling and moving closer to each other. It was obvious that they were trying to reassemble. Zhuowen naturally wouldn't let him have his way. He would take advantage of his weakness to take his life. At the thought of this, Zhuowen pulled out his sword once again. This time, it contained a terrifying power that could destroy the rules. When the sword light shot out, it transformed into a myriad of sword essences that were like meteors. A miserable shriek resounded. Shortly after, the Master Devourer, who had been cut into 4 parts, was completely crushed into black powder by the myriad of sword essences. Disappear! Zhuowen's gaze was cold. With a clang, he pulled out his 5th sword. The 5th sword had already reached the peak of Zhuowen's strength. It was the strongest move he had ever used. The 5th sword was too powerful. The Master Devourer, who had been crushed into black powder, let out an even more terrifying shriek. He knew very well that if he was hit by the 5th sword, he would definitely die. Clang! Unfortunately, when the 5th sword light swept out, the void around Master Devourer, which had been shattered into countless pieces, suddenly became independent and formed an independent void. The independent void distorted like a whirlpool and disappeared before Zhuowen's eyes. As for the 5th slash, it directly swept past the void that had been isolated and disappeared. It just so happened to pass by the void that had disappeared. At the same time, an extremely strong sense of danger suddenly rose in his heart. Bang! A palm silently descended onto Zhuowen's back. On the other hand, Zhuowen seemed to have noticed it, and he stomped with his right foot while 2nd level Dao insight suffused his feet as he swiftly retreated. Unfortunately, the speed of this palm was too swift. At the instant Zhuowen retreated explosively, it heavily smashed onto Zhuowen's back. Fart! Zhuowen spat out a mouthful of blood, and he relied on the force of the recoil to shoot out explosively. After that, he looked at Yang Yi, who was nearby behind him. "Your reaction isn't bad." The corners of Yang Yi's mouth curled up slightly. He stared indifferently at Zhuowen, who retreated explosively and continued. Your natural talent is really not bad since you're able to comprehend second-level Dao insight in such a short period of time. It has exceeded my expectations as well. Zhuowen was blasted flying, and he stared fixedly at Yang Yi, who had a gaze that was calm like water. At this moment, Yang Yi's image in his heart suddenly expanded countless times. It was as if the Yang Yi he was facing at this moment was no longer the demigod Yang Yi from before, but a peerless expert who was heavily pressuring him. Although the aura on Yang Yi's body was still that of a peak demigod, that aura gave Zhuowen an extremely subtle feeling. Who exactly are you? This subtle feeling caused Zhuowen to involuntarily ask this question that even he felt was inexplicable. Yang Yi did not directly answer Zhuowen's question. Instead, he muttered to himself. This time, your divine artifact should be able to continuously release 5 sword strikes. After releasing 5 sword strikes, you must have a blank period of time to relieve yourself. Moreover, the price to release sword strikes is extremely high. After releasing 5 sword strikes consecutively, I'm afraid your body is already somewhat unable to bear it, right? Moreover, the power that Sungjie gave you is also gradually draining away. You are already powerless to reverse the situation. Yang Yi's gaze was indifferent. He looked at Zhuowen with a trace of pity. Zhuowen sighed silently in his heart. Yang Yi was right. 5 sword strikes was already his limit. Moreover, Sungjie's power was about to dissipate. In addition, Yang Yi had seized the opportunity to severely injure him. Therefore, he was indeed at the end of his road. Zhuowen, as your former senior brother, today I will give you a quick death, Yang Yi said faintly. He waved his right hand gently, and the void around Zhuowen suddenly stagnated. Above Zhuowen's head, countless starlight condensed and turned into a huge starlight saber shadow that was as huge as a dragon. This saber shadow was so huge that it lay across the starry sky, as if it had divided the entire starry sky into 2 halves. Zhuowen, seeing this scene, the black-veiled woman on the Luo Yang whale, Shiji, and many warriors of the heavenly armor continent could not help but call out Zhuowen's name. We have to save him. The black-veiled woman's beautiful eyes revealed a determined look. She planned to make a hand seal to control the Luo Yang whale to return to save Zhuowen. However, her action was immediately intercepted by the first mountain god not far away. What are you doing? The black-veiled woman looked coldly at the first mountain god. The first mountain god's eyes were indifferent. He waved his sleeve and released a group of Rika people in the Azure Dragon Hall. They looked around in confusion. You are too weak to be Yang Yi's opponent. Take care of these Rika descendants. Otherwise, Zhuowen's sacrifice will be in vain. After that, the first mountain god took the Azure Dragon Hall and rushed out in the direction of Zhuowen. The black-veiled woman stared at the first mountain god in a daze. She fell into a state of absent-mindedness. In the end, she silently put down her hands that were making hand seals. Zhuowen, the black-veiled woman, looked up and stared at the distant figure that was slowly descending in the starry sky. She suddenly felt a little pain in her heart. She had worked hard enough, but in the end, she still couldn't help Zhuowen. She suddenly felt that she was a failure. Zhuowen, Long Xiaotian and Feng Xiao looked up and stared at the figure that was descending in the starry sky. Lord Long Wen, not only Long Xiaotian and Feng Xiao, but the group of Rika people also looked up. The confusion in their eyes was gone. Instead, they were full of worry. Although the dazzling starlight saber shadow was beautiful, its power was extremely terrifying. Even from afar, one could clearly feel how terrifying this saber shadow was. Zhuowen quietly stared at the descending saber shadow. At this moment, he was extremely calm, so calm that it was terrifying. He slowly grasped the hilt of his sword. He planned to use the 6th sword. Although this sword would cost his life, he had no other choice. Death was imminent, but the closer he was to death, the calmer Zhuowen was. However, his only regret was indeed Mu Chenxue. Chen Shui, I will die if I lose this battle. When I die, I will be reborn in the spirit ring and we will be together forever. Muttering in a low voice, Zhuowen slowly pulled out the 6th sword. As soon as this sword was pulled out, a fierce and unyielding sword chi soared into the sky. This sword chi became more and more terrifying. The column formed by the sword chi pierced the sky as if it was going to pierce through the sky. Since I'm going to die anyway, I'll give this sword to you, Yang Yi. Zhuowen suddenly turned his head and looked at Yang Yi behind the saber shadow. He suddenly pulled out the sixth sword. The originally turbulent and terrifying sword chi suddenly stagnated and then began to shrink. This sword chi condensed into an insignificant point, which was even several times smaller than a fingernail. Whoosh! The sword chi condensed at an extremely fast speed. It rushed out of the range of the saber shadow and arrived in front of Yang Yi. Yang Yi clearly felt the threat of the sword chi. He narrowed his eyes and involuntarily took a few steps back. Then, he stretched out his right hand and an independent void appeared in front of him, forming a thick void wall. Bang, bang, bang. Unfortunately, under the bombardment of the sword chi, the huge void walls were shattered and pierced through one after another. After all the void walls were shattered, Yang Yi's eyes were calm. He waved his right hand and the void beside him split open. He stepped into the void crack and prepared to dodge the sword chi. Unfortunately, the sword chi was not simple. The moment the void cracked open, the sword chi exploded. Countless sword chi flew in all directions and turned into a huge blurry figure. This figure was tens of thousands of feet tall. It held an ordinary iron sword in its hand and slowly waved it. Just by waving it, the void crack completely collapsed. Yang Yi was forced out of the void with a gloomy look in his eyes. Whoosh! Chapter 1876. Self-detonation. The sixth sword was the blood-splashing 5 steps ultimate sword. It was also a sword strike that risked one's life. Back then, the demigod Zhon Bai had risked his life to unleash the sixth sword. He had even managed to injure heavenly god Gan Ji, who was an entire realm lower than him. This sword strike was enough to kill any cultivator below the heavenly god realm. The moment Zhuowen unleashed the sixth sword, he had imbued it with his second-level Dao intent. Zhuowen's sixth sword was much more powerful than Zhon Bai's sixth sword. This sword strike could even kill a heavenly god. Although Yang Yi's strength appeared to be at the peak of the demigod realm, Zhuowen had a strange feeling. Yang Yi's speed was mysterious and unpredictable. Moreover, he had never displayed his true strength. Jian Wushuang guessed that Yang Yi's true strength should be at the heavenly god realm. His strength might even be above Hu Zhu and heavenly god Gan Ji. Therefore, the moment Yang Yi attacked, Jian Wushuang did not hesitate to unleash the blood-splashing 5-step sixth sword. The blurry figure opened a pair of blurry eyes and stared coldly at Yang Yi below. An unimaginable pressure surged out from the pair of blurry eyes and pressed down on Yang Yi's body. Clang! The blurry figure slashed the illusory iron sword at Yang Yi's head. When the sword slashed down, Yang Yi's head would fall to the ground. Not far away, in an independent space, countless black fog condensed into Hu Zhu's figure. At this moment, Hu Zhu noticed the illusory iron sword slashing down from the blurry figure. His face was as pale as snow. The pressure from the illusory iron sword was too terrifying. He did not even dare to take the initiative to face the illusory iron sword. He knew very well that if he were to face the illusory iron sword, he would die without a doubt. How did this kid have such a powerful trump card? Hu Zhu looked at Zhuowen with lingering fear. His eyes were filled with dread. Even though Zhuowen was in a very bad state, his body was covered with countless cracks. Blood was spurting out from his body. His vitality was fading with time. However, Master Devourer still didn't dare to underestimate Zhuowen. Just the blood-splashing 5-step sixth sword was enough to annihilate him. If Zhuowen had used this sword earlier, he would have died without a doubt. I wonder if Yang Yi can withstand this sword? Master Shi muttered as his gaze landed on Yang Yi, who had been forced out of the spatial passageway by the powerful sword intent. Yang Yi's eyes were gloomy. He looked up at the iron sword shadow that was descending and coldly snorted, "What a troublesome fellow. He actually wants to drag me down with him even if he has to risk his life." As he spoke, Yang Yi formed a sword with his right hand and drew a circle in a clockwise direction in front of him. Then, the circle that Yang Yi drew suddenly collapsed, and the terrifying power of the void reassembled, forming a huge black halberd that was several feet long. Halberd rend. Yang Yi's eyes were cold as he threw out the black halberd. Wherever the halberd passed, the surrounding void seemed to be squeezed and exploded. As the black halberd passed through the void, it formed a huge void gully. Its power was shocking to the eyes. Bang! The black halberd was indeed terrifying. However, the blurry figure's eyes were still cold. The iron sword shadow stood on top of the black halberd without any hesitation. Soon after, the large black halberd with an imposing aura was hacked into countless black powder by the illusory metal sword. However, the blurry figure's body also shook violently under this terrifying impact. Zhuo Wenming could clearly see that the blurry figure had become extremely dim under the impact. Obviously, although the blurry figure had gained the upper hand in this collision, he had also paid a huge price. However, Zhuowen couldn't care less about all of this. Now, 90% of his body was cracked, and he was like a human-shaped ceramic that was about to break. The remaining power of Cungjie in Zhuowen's body had completely disappeared. Zhuowen's life was also gradually fading away along with the disappearance of Cungjie's power. Before I die, I hope that the blood-splashing 5-step 6 sword can completely kill Yang Yi. Zhuo Wen turned his head with difficulty and stared at the already dim and blurry figure in the sky. Once again, he swung his iron sword. This time, the sword ruthlessly slashed at Yang Yi's body, causing a terrifying sword light to erupt. However, soon, Zhuowen found that the terrifying sword light began to shrink at the moment of explosion. Finally, it shrank into a tiny light spot and disappeared. The moment the sword light disappeared, Yang Yi's embarrassed figure slowly walked out from the other side of the sword light. At this moment, Yang Yi's eyes were gloomy. His clothes were in a mess, and he looked like a beggar. Your 6th sword is very powerful. Unfortunately, it's a bit difficult to kill me. Yang Yi's eyes fell on Zhuowen. A killing intent slowly spread out from his body. His aura was increasing layer by layer. In an instant, he broke through the early divine realm. Then, it continued to increase until it reached the middle divine realm. Finally, it stopped at the late divine realm. Originally, I had hidden my cultivation deep enough. Unfortunately, I was forced to reveal my true form by your 6th sword. This really pisses me off. Yang Yi said coldly. Not far away, Hu Zhu's pupils shrank to the size of needles. He couldn't help but exclaim, "Late divine realm? You've been hiding your strength all this time?" Yang Yi didn't even look at Hu Zhu. Instead, he stared at Zhuowen below and said, "You're the first person who has angered me. Although you'll definitely die even if I don't do anything, I still want to kill you with my own hands." Having said that, Yang Yi took a step forward and slowly walked towards Zhuowen. With every step he took, the space beneath his feet seemed to shrink. It was extremely strange. At this moment, Zhuowen was powerless and couldn't move. He calmly stared at Yang Yi, who was walking towards him. He didn't feel any fear. Die. Yang Yi also calmly stared at Zhuowen. He clenched his right hand and the void exploded, forming a huge void halberd. Holding the void halberd, Yang Yi went straight for Zhuowen's chest, hoping to kill him with a single strike. Unfortunately, at the instant Yang Yi's halberd was about to pierce Zhuowen's heart, a black shadow had unknowingly flashed in front of Zhuowen. "Zhuowen, run!" The appearance of the black shadow was out of Zhuowen and Yang Yi's expectations. When Zhuowen heard the black shadow's words, he felt a powerful force coming from his body. Then, he was sent flying by the force. The moment he was sent flying, Zhuowen turned his head with difficulty. With reddened eyes, he saw that the black shadow was none other than Fushi. At this moment, Fushi was surrounded by 4 tomb guards. These 4 tomb guards were Dongfang, Nangong, Shimen, and Beichen, the 4 true immortals who had protected Fushi for 10,000 years. The 4 tomb guards formed an impenetrable stone shield in front of Fushi. For a moment, they blocked Yang Yi's attack. "Dongfang, Nangong, Shimen, and Beichen, I'm truly sorry for dragging you 4 into this battle." Fushi looked bitterly at the 4 coffins embedded in the stone shield. "My lord, why care about this? If you hadn't taken us in, we would have been dead long ago. Our lives were given to us by you, my lord. Why are you being so courteous? Dongfang giggled. Beichen's cold voice sounded, Dongfang is right. You're being too courteous. Our lives were given to us by you, my lord. It's our duty to live and die with you. Hee. I'll listen to everything you say, Beichen, Shimon's simple and honest voice sounded. Nangong said elegantly, there are things a gentleman should do and things he shouldn't do. Repaying kindness is something a gentleman must do. Ha ha, Fushi's eyes turned red when he heard the four's words. However, there was nothing he could do. If he didn't rely on the power of the four true immortal Dao soldiers, it would be impossible for him to resist the late-stage Empyrean god Yang Yi. You overestimate yourselves. Yang Yi's eyes were cold. He held the halberd in his hand and spun it. The halberd spun violently, creating a terrifying void wind. Under Yang Yi's control, the tip of the halberd smashed into the stone shield. Then, the stone shield completely collapsed. The four bronze coffins embedded in the four corners of the stone shield flew out and opened their lids. Four mighty figures flew out from within. These four were naturally Dongfang, Nangong, Shimon, and Beichen. My lord, we'll go first. The four looked deeply at Fushi behind them. Then, their auras suddenly exploded. This explosion was in a short period of time, increasing by hundreds and thousands. It was as if there was a ball of fire burning in their bodies. Burning your primordial spirits? You're just four pieces of trash. What's the point of burning your primordial spirits? Yang Yi's pupils shrank. Then, with a cold smile, he swung the halberd in his right hand forward. Instantly, countless halberd shadows enveloped the four like a dense rain. Explode. The four of them looked determined. The moment the halberd shadows enveloped them, they detonated their primordial spirits one after another. Four terrifying explosions resounded, and four terrifying mushroom clouds rose in the starry sky. Yang Yi did not expect that the four of them would so decisively self-detonate their primordial spirits. For a moment, he was caught off guard. The shockwave of the four primordial spirits' self-detonation broke through the halberd shadows and blasted in front of him. Deng deng deng. Yang Yi let out a muffled groan and involuntarily retreated. He gloomily stared at the mushroom cloud caused by the explosion of the four nascent divinities with an extremely angry expression. However, before he could regain his senses, a black figure suddenly descended from the sky. Moreover, as the black shadow continued to approach, its aura grew at a rapid rate. This growth was even more terrifying than that of the four people from the east. Yang Yi, even if I die, I'll take you down with me. Fushi's eyes were calm as he stared at Yang Yi, who was getting closer and closer. His primordial spirit was burning, causing his body to erupt with a dazzling light like the sun. Yang Yi wanted to escape, but Fushi, as a demigod, burned all the power of his primordial spirit in his body. In an instant, a terrifying power comparable to that of a divine realm expert erupted. It was like a heavy mountain pressing down on Yang Yi, making it difficult for him to move. Bang! Another huge explosion resounded. Fushi had paid the price of burning his primordial spirit to completely detonate himself. The terrifying and brilliant explosion completely filled the surroundings. Chapter 1877. The power of space-time. Looking at the terrifying explosion, there was no joy in Zhuo Wen's eyes. Instead, they were filled with sorrow. He knew very well that no matter what happened to Yang Yi, Fushi, Dongfang, Shimon, Nangong, and Beichen, the four true immortals, had all sacrificed themselves. Moreover, Zhuowen had watched the five of them die before his eyes. At this moment, Zhuowen's heart was filled with a sense of powerlessness. I'm dead, but I can't accept it. Zhuowen only felt his eyelids getting heavier and heavier. He could clearly feel the vitality in his body gradually fading away. He knew that he was not far from death. The moment his eyelids were about to close, he saw a black shadow appear in front of him. This black shadow was dressed in a black robe, and his eyes were filled with coldness. He stared at Zhuowen, whose vitality was constantly fading away, and sighed softly. I originally thought that this thing that Lord Tsungjie gave me would not be used. I didn't expect that I would have to use it in the end. First mountain god, Zhuowen muttered in a low voice. He only felt his eyelids getting heavier and heavier. The moment his eyelids completely closed, he clearly saw that the first mountain god had taken out a black crystal at some point in time. Zhuowen, comprehend the laws of the last two forbidden areas of the Blue Dragon Hall's third layer, the 19th mountain. As he spoke, the first mountain god slowly pressed the black crystal into Zhuowen's glabella. Suddenly, a black light burst out from Zhuowen's glabella. This black light split into thousands of black threads and wrapped around Zhuowen layer by layer. Zhuowen slowly opened his eyes. He saw a blue sky and an endless sea under the sky, and he was standing on the shore of the sea. Deep behind the shore, there was a mountain that reached the sky. This is the 19th mountain. Staring at the mountain behind him, Zhuowen's eyes became clear. Because he had used the sixth sword of the blood-splashing 5 steps, his vitality was gradually fading away. He should have died. But now, he had appeared in the 19th mountain of the Azure Dragon Palace's third heaven. Soon, Zhuowen recalled the moment he closed his eyes and saw the first mountain god stuffing a black crystal into his forehead. The last words of the first mountain god still lingered in his mind. Comprehend the laws of the last two forbidden lands. But is it too late now? Zhuowen's mouth was filled with bitterness. Now that the battle was imminent, although Yang Yi had been stopped by the self-detonation of Fuxi and the 4 true immortal Dao soldiers, it was still uncertain whether or not he would perish. Moreover, other than Yang Yi, there was also that master devourer who was eyeing him covetously. How could he possibly have the time to comprehend the last 2 laws of the so-called forbidden area? However, when Zhuowen planned to use the usual method to control the Azure Dragon Hall and release him, he discovered that it was useless. He was still on the shore of the 19th mountain. After trying many times, Zhuowen found that the results were the same. Finally, he gave up and looked at the 19th mountain. Looks like I can only enter the forbidden area of the 19th mountain to take a look. Zhuowen sighed softly and slowly stepped into the 19th mountain. He had previously comprehended the first 4 of the 6 forbidden areas of the 19th mountain, so it didn't take him too long to pass through the first 4 and arrive at the entrance of the 5th forbidden area. Let's go in. Zhuowen sighed softly. Since he couldn't leave, the only thing he could do now was to follow the first mountain god's instructions and comprehend the laws of space and time in the last 2 forbidden areas. Within the 5th forbidden area, there was nothing at all. The only thing that existed was endless space. This forbidden area was filled with countless small spaces in different directions. These small spaces were like the inside of a kaleidoscope, causing one to lose all sense of direction when looking at them. Zhuowen stared silently at the countless small spaces around him. He was shocked to discover that these small spaces actually had clear lines in his eyes, without any sense of complexity. At the same time, a wisp of black light suddenly shot out from Zhuowen's forehead. This wisp of black light wriggled and formed a black crystal. The moment the black crystal formed, the countless small spaces around it suddenly collapsed, turning into fragments of Daokong and entering the black crystal. After absorbing the countless space fragments, the black crystal returned to the deepest part of Zhuowen's forehead. Zhuowen discovered that he now had an extremely deep understanding of space. He only needed to wave his hand gently, and he could completely freeze the space within 100,000 feet, or even several 100,000 feet, or even several million feet. I comprehended the laws of space. Zhuowen's eyes were fixed on his hands. His face was filled with astonishment and disbelief. However, when he came back to his senses, he quickly thought of the black crystal that shot out from between his brows. He knew that the reason why he could comprehend the laws of space so quickly was probably closely related to the black crystal. Perhaps I really can comprehend the laws of space and time consecutively, and merge them into a wisp of the power of space-time. Zhuowen revealed an excited expression, and then slowly walked towards the entrance of the 6th forbidden area. The 6th forbidden area was a desolate place. The only thing that existed in this desolate place was a dilapidated temple. The temple was made of yellow soil, and the surroundings of the temple were boundless desert. It was completely golden and boundless. Zhuowen looked at the dilapidated temple. Afterwards, he discovered that the temple was constantly changing. The dilapidated temple rapidly became glossy and new, no longer giving off an aura of decay. In Zhuowen's eyes, it was like time had reversed to countless years ago, when the temple was still complete. Time continued to reverse. The temple gradually disappeared, and humans constantly appeared. Afterwards, the humans disappeared, and everything disappeared. It was like they had returned to the beginning, and this place had become a desolate place once again. However, there was nothing in this desolate place, not even the dilapidated temple. There was only a dry, barren land. The end of time is the starting point. Everything will obtain the truth from the beginning, and time is the same. Zhuowen's eyes shone with understanding. The black crystal between his eyebrows shot out again, absorbing all the laws of time there. Zhuowen gently held the black crystal in his right hand. At that moment, the black crystal in his eyes was no longer ordinary. He could clearly sense that the laws of time and space within the crystal were intertwining with each other, as if they were mutually reinforcing and restraining each other. The intertwining only lasted for a short while before the two laws completely fused together. Bang! The black crystal shattered, and a thumb-sized bolt of purplish-black lightning shot out. As soon as the purplish-black lightning appeared, the entire sky changed. Black clouds constantly swirled and sank, and countless bolts of lightning wreaked havoc, as if they were welcoming and worshipping the purplish-black lightning. Zhuowen's eyes narrowed. He could sense that the purplish-black lightning contained an unbelievable amount of spacetime force. Aside from that, he discovered that apart from the spacetime force, he could also sense the sharp aura that he had sensed from the mysterious eyeball in the purplish-black lightning. He had an extremely deep impression of the sharp aura. After all, the black lightning in the mysterious eyeball had saved him several times, so he obviously could not forget it. Swoosh! The moment the aura shot out, the black eyeball that had been hiding in his collar suddenly shot out, revealing an extremely excited glow in its eyes. The mysterious eyeball shot out, and as soon as it opened its eyes, the black lightning shot out, turning into a sharp mouth that swallowed the purplish-black lightning. Unfortunately, the moment the mouth formed by the black lightning got close to the purplish-black lightning, it instantly collapsed. What was even more incredible was that after the purplish-black lightning shattered the black lightning, it shot out and directly enveloped the mysterious eyeball. Hiss! Being enveloped by the purplish-black lightning completely triggered the fear in the mysterious eyeball. The mysterious eyeball continued to release black lightning, trying to blast away the purplish-black lightning's encirclement. Unfortunately, it was of no use. Moreover, Zhuowen discovered that the purplish-black lightning wrapped around the mysterious eyeball was rushing towards his forehead, which shocked him. However, before he could completely react, the purplish-black lightning instantly entered his forehead, and the mysterious eyeball was brought into Zhuowen's forehead by the purplish-black lightning. Zhuowen only felt a pain in his forehead, and he was shocked to discover that the purplish-black lightning was raging in his sea of consciousness. In an instant, countless purplish-black electric threads were scattered around his sea of consciousness. These purplish-black electric threads were like branches and meridians, rooted in the deepest part of his sea of consciousness, and at the tip of the purplish-black electric threads was the mysterious eyeball. At this moment, even though the mysterious eyeball was constantly struggling, it still could not escape the shackles of the purplish-black electric threads. It could only watch as the purplish-black electric threads took root in the depths of Zhuowen's sea of consciousness. The process of the purplish-black electric threads taking root in his sea of consciousness was extremely painful. Zhuowen only felt a splitting headache, as if his head had split open, and he was banging his head on the ground. This kind of pain lasted for only 1 hour, and then it disappeared completely. Zhuowen also found that the mysterious eyeball attached to his forehead gave him a feeling of a blood connection. Kid, this is Devour's most important heaven-devouring eye. That year, this heaven-devouring eye was taken away by God Ganj, and it was sealed together with him. However, back then, before this eye was sealed, I had already done something to it. It was also the final trump card I left behind. This trump card was prepared for the worst possible outcome. A helpless voice slowly arose in Zhuowen's head. Zhuoan immediately recognized that it was Cangjia's voice. If I use this trick, it means that I'm dead, and the strongest parasite in Devour's body has completely controlled me. It also means that God Ganj has been released. The heavenly armor continent has come to its end. I'll leave the rest to you. Kang Long will help you. The voice slowly faded away. At the same time, the heaven-devouring eye in Zhuoan's glabella cracked open, and a powerful devouring power gushed out from the eye. The enormous 19th mountain was swallowed by the powerful devouring power of the heaven-devouring eye. A massive anti-clockwise vortex appeared under the 19th mountain. A massive bronze coffin floated in the vortex. Clang, clang. The bronze coffin opened, and a figure walked out. Chapter 1878. Kang Long Taoist priest. The figure who walked out of the bronze coffin was wearing a green Taoist robe. His hair was tied up in a bun, and he held a white horsetail whisk in his hand. He looked like an immortal. Zhuoan was no stranger to this middle-aged man who looked like a Taoist priest. He was the master of the Azure Dragon Hall, Kang Long Taoist. Zhuoan did not expect Kang Long Taoist to be alive in the Azure Dragon Hall. What was even more unbelievable was that Kang Long Taoist had been suppressed under the 19th mountain. After comprehending the laws of the 6 forbidden areas of the 19th mountain, the 19th mountain was actually devoured by the Eye of Heaven devouring. Zhuoan's gaze landed on Taoist master Kang Long, who had shot out from the bronze coffin, as a contemplative look appeared in his eyes. He clearly remembered that the first mountain god had said that if he could comprehend the laws of the 6 great forbidden areas of the 19th mountain, then the first mountain god would completely break free from the shackles of the Azure Dragon Hall. However, now that he had comprehended 6 laws of the 6 forbidden areas of the 19th mountain, Kang Long Taoist, the master of the Azure Dragon Hall, had walked out of the 19th mountain. Back then, the first mountain god had clearly said that Kang Long Taoist was his mortal enemy. Now, he had followed the first mountain god's instructions and released Kang Long Taoist. All of this confused Zhuoan. However, after thinking about it carefully, Zhuoan seemed to understand something. Memory splitting technique, Zhuoan muttered in a low voice. He thought of his perfect holy body clone and spiritual power clone. These 2 clones had been separated from his original body after he had cultivated the spirit clone Duan Yi. Moreover, the 2 clones did not affect each other, but they were of the same origin. He could permanently separate the 2 clones or merge them into one to increase his strength. The memory splitting technique was a strange secret technique that the first mountain god had taught him. He had already suspected why the first mountain god did not cultivate the memory splitting technique. However, because the first mountain god had only cultivated his physical body, with the characteristics of the memory splitting technique, even if the first mountain god had cultivated it, it would be difficult for him to separate clones with different characteristics. But now, Zhuoan could vaguely guess that it was not that the first mountain god did not cultivate the soul-splitting technique, but that the first mountain god was a doppelganger created by the Kang Long Taoist after he cultivated the soul-splitting technique. Back then, the reason why the first mountain god allowed him to comprehend the laws of the 6 great forbidden lands was most likely not to release him, but to release his original body, the Azure Dragon Taoist. Taoist Kang Long slowly turned his head, smiled at Zhuoan and said, "Zhuoan, you don't seem very surprised to see me." Zhuoan raised his head to look at Taoist Kang Long and said in a deep voice, "Mind-splitting secret technique?" Taoist master Kang Long took a deep look at Zhuoan. He was not too surprised and continued, "It seems that you have guessed it. The first mountain god is indeed my clone. Then why did you lie to me back then?" Zhuoan asked calmly. Taoist master Kang Long smiled and said, "Because the time was not right. It was really inappropriate to let you know the identity of the first mountain god in advance." Speaking of this, Taoist master Kang Long revealed a bitter smile and said, "It seems that brother Cangjie really gave you the origin black crystal. Does this mean that brother Cangjie has fallen?" Zhuoan looked at Taoist master Kang Long silently and did not answer. There were some things that Taoist master Kang Long should know without him saying. After all, the first mountain god was his doppelganger. Taoist master Kang Long should know about Cangjie's situation. Can you help me defeat Yang Yi? Zhuowen asked in a deep voice. Taoist Master Kang Long took a deep look at Zhuowen, shook his head and said, Yang Yi has already exceeded Brother Tsungjie's and my expectations. The worst plan we made was that the strongest parasite in Devour's body would seize Brother Tsungjie's body and absorb Devour's power to become a divine realm expert. It's just as you've seen. Devouring its master means devouring its queen, causing its strength to leap to the early stage of the heavenly god realm. That's the worst outcome we've achieved back then. If that's all, I'll be able to deal with it. But now, Yang Yi, who came out of nowhere, has the terrifying cultivation of the late stage of the divine realm. Such an expert is enough to destroy our heavenly armor star. He is many times more powerful than Devour's master. When my original body and my doppelganger combine, I will break through to the divine realm. However, I will only be at the early stage of the divine realm. I will not be Yang Yi's opponent at all. Speaking of this, Taoist Master Kang Long looked at Zhuowen, his eyes full of hope. He continued, but you are different. Yang Yi is an accident that Brother Tsungjie and I did not expect, but you are also out of our expectations. You have comprehended Tao meaning and raised it to level 2. In other words, if your cultivation can be raised to the early stage of the divine realm, you will be able to fight Yang Yi. Zhuowen's eyes narrowed. He did not deny Taoist Master Kang Long's words. With the support of level 2 Tao meaning, if the strength of an early stage of the divine realm was doubled, it was indeed possible for him to fight a late stage of the divine realm. However, Zhuowen's current cultivation was too weak. He was only at the late stage of the divine realm, which was still a distance away from the peak of the divine realm. His previous cultivation of the demigod realm was forcibly raised by Tsungjie's power. It was extremely difficult for him to raise his cultivation to the divine realm because of this. Taoist Master Kang Long also saw the difficult expression in Zhuowen's eyes. He suddenly smiled and said, Zhuowen, I know what you are worried about. I have a way to raise your strength to the early stage of the divine realm in a short time, but the price is very high. Speaking of this, Taoist Master Kang Long suddenly knelt on one knee and bowed to Zhuowen with great respect. He pleaded, Zhuowen, my strength is not enough. Only you, who have comprehended level 2 Tao meaning, can contend against Yang Yi. Seeing that you are a citizen of the heavenly armor continent, can you help me this time? Zhuowen helped Taoist Master Kang Long up. In his mind, he thought of Fuxi, Dongfang, Beichen, and the other 4 who did not hesitate to self-detonate to stop Yang Yi. He was deeply touched. Senior Kang Long, even if you don't ask, I will do my best. The heavenly armor continent is not only your hometown, it is also my hometown. My family and friends are also there. I am duty-bound to protect the heavenly armor continent. Zhuowen sighed and continued, if Senior really has a way to raise my strength to the early stage of the divine realm, Junior will not hesitate to pay any price. Taoist Master Kang Long revealed a gratified expression and then slowly walked to Zhuowen's side. Senior, you. Only now did Zhuowen see clearly that although Taoist Master Kang Long's aura was as vast as the ocean, his body actually looked somewhat illusory, as if he did not have a physical body. This old man's physical body had already collapsed in the great battle 10,000 years ago. Relying on the first mountain god avatar derived from Duan Yi and the uniqueness of the Azure Dragon Palace's third heaven, the 19th mountain, this old man's soul was suppressed in the 19th mountain to recuperate. Once someone comprehends the 6 great laws that I set up in the 6th forbidden area of the 19th mountain, my soul will be transformed into a divine soul. Originally, I planned to transform my soul into a divine soul. When the first mountain god's physical body reached the divine body realm, I would combine the two and finally reach the divine realm. Moreover, I would not be an ordinary divine realm expert. I would be able to fight against a mid-divine realm expert as soon as I reached the early stage of the divine realm. Unfortunately, the plan could not keep up with the changes. Whether it was the soul or the physical body, it did not achieve the expected plan. Moreover, the war between Devour and the divine realm appeared in advance. If Brother Tsungjie had not given you the origin black crystal, my soul would have been successfully promoted to the divine soul realm. If Yang Yi did not exist, I could also carry my divine soul on my perfect divine body and forcibly promote it to the early stage of the divine realm. Although it would not be perfect, it would not be much weaker than the early stage of the divine realm. It would be enough to resist the invasion of Devour. However, Yang Yi was too strong. Even if my divine soul and divine body combined, it was still impossible for me to be Yang Yi's opponent. Therefore, I placed all my hopes on you. The early stage of the divine realm with the support of the second Tao meaning is enough to rival a late divine realm expert. At this point, Taoist Master Kang Long's mouth was full of a smile. It was an extremely carefree smile. However, Zhuowen had a trace of ominous feeling in his heart. However, before Zhuowen could say anything, Taoist Master Kang Long waved his sleeve and pointed his right finger at the space between Zhuowen's eyebrows. Zhuowen wanted to dodge, but he discovered that the speed of Taoist Master Kang Long's right finger was too fast. Moreover, his surroundings were filled with an extremely surging shackling force, causing him to be utterly unable to dodge. Bang! When Taoist Master Kang Long's right finger completely touched Zhuowen's forehead, an extremely surging force poured into Zhuowen's sea of consciousness. This force was extremely strange. When this force entered Zhuowen's sea of consciousness, Zhuowen found that his sea of consciousness was undergoing an extremely strange transformation. Under the transformation of this force, his sea of consciousness gradually dried up, revealing the chapped riverbed below the surface of the sea. When the last drop of seawater evaporated, the chapped riverbed collapsed inch by inch into nothingness. Then, Zhuowen found that his sea of consciousness had become a space of nothingness. Moreover, as this force continued to enter, the space of nothingness began to be filled with bits of starlight. The starlight became denser and denser. Under the embellishment of the starlight, this dark space of nothingness became a galaxy of countless twinkling stars. This galaxy was extremely large, many times larger than the sea of consciousness that was previously filled with seawater. Zhuowen, this is the divine soul. Only after you have advanced to the divine transformation realm will your sea of consciousness completely transform into a divine soul. The divine soul is very large, like the boundless starry sky, as far as the eye can see. This is the only thing I can do for you. When Zhuowen's sea of consciousness completely transformed into a divine soul, Taoist Master Kang Long's voice slowly rang in Zhuowen's mind. However, this voice revealed a trace of exhaustion and relief. At this moment, the first mountain god outside was holding the azure dragon hall in his hand. When Taoist Master Kang Long completely helped Zhuowen develop his divine soul, countless cracks appeared on the surface of the azure dragon hall, and finally shattered into countless light spots. These light spots were like armor, densely covering the surface of the first mountain god's body, forming a dazzling and terrifying light robe. Chapter 1879. True appearance at the cost of breaking the azure dragon hall. Although my perfect holy body couldn't reach the divine body realm, it has reached the demigod body. With the demigod body, it should be able to withstand the star god power of the heavenly armor star and the divine soul, the first mountain god murmured. The first mountain god mumbled softly. He glanced at the unconscious Zhuowen beside him, and a look of contemplation appeared on his face. The moment the azure dragon hall shattered, Zhuowen's figure had already appeared. The life force that was gradually disappearing from Zhuowen's body was also slowly recovering. The first mountain god knew that the recovery of Zhuowen's vitality had a lot to do with the Kang dragon Taoist sealed in the 19th mountain. With a sigh, the first mountain god took a step forward. Like a stream of light, he entered the heavenly armor star. The heavenly armor star was created mainly because of Devour. It could be said that the heavenly armor star didn't have a star core, but the adult Devour acted as the star core. Now, the adult Devour was devoured by the strongest parasite and became the master Devour. The energy of the heavenly armor star suddenly became much thinner. However, the adult Devour had existed in the heavenly armor star for countless years, so the energy remaining in the heavenly armor star was probably much denser than that of an ordinary planet. The heaven-devouring eye in Zhuowen's body was the most important part of the adult Devour. It contained a trace of Devour's origin. Sungjie had wanted the heaven-devouring eye for a long time. After all, the heaven-devouring eye contained Devour's aura, and the heavenly armor star was created because of the adult Devour. Therefore, the heaven-devouring eye could be used as a substitute for the heavenly armor star's core. This was the last trick that Sungjie had arranged in the mysterious eyeball. In order to become a divine god, one had to refine a planet and combine the energy of the planet with the transformed divine soul to form the powerful star god power. The star god power was the energy of an entire planet. Whether in terms of quality or quantity, it was much more powerful than the so-called immortal power. If Sungjie, Cao Yu and Janbi had not used the power of the heavenly armor star and gathered the power of all the sages on the continent, it would have been impossible for them to fight against the gods of divine realm. Now, the first mountain god could clearly sense that Zhuo Wen's sea of consciousness had completely transformed into a divine soul, and the heavenly devouring eye between Zhuo Wen's eyebrows had already opened. He already knew the decision Daoist Kang Long had made. Although he was a clone of the Kang Long Taoist, he had been separated from the Kang Long Taoist for too long. Therefore, in the long years, the first mountain god had also developed an independent personality with his own thoughts and emotions. Even if he had his own personality, a doppelganger was still a doppelganger. He would still be affected by the main body. In the 10,000 years that the Kang Long Taoist's divine soul had been suppressed in the 19th mountain, the first mountain god was not affected by the main body. However, the moment the Kang Long Taoist's divine soul left the 19th mountain, he felt an indisputable intent. This intent belonged to the main body. Although I'm not happy that I've done all the work for others, this is the intent of the main body. Moreover, Zhuowen has comprehended the second level of Tao meaning and is indeed the best candidate. However, I'm still not happy. The first mountain god was extremely fast. The moment he entered the heavenly armor star, he took a deep look at Zhuowen, who was floating in the starry sky, and muttered to himself. After the first mountain god had completely disappeared into the heavenly armor planet, Yang Yi was still trapped in the self-destruct cluster of Fuxi and the other four. He had not completely escaped, but everyone could clearly feel that the terrifying explosion cluster was shrinking. There was no doubt that Yang Yi, who was inside the explosion, was not affected too much. With the speed at which the explosion was shrinking, it would not take long for it to completely shrink and be annihilated. At this moment, Master Devourer, who was not far away, had completely gathered his scattered body parts back together and formed a complete body. However, Master Devourer's body was trembling slightly. It was obvious that he had paid a great price to gather his scattered body parts back together. At the very least, Master Devourer was not in a good state. Zhuo Wen, you little bastard. You've put me in such a miserable state. I won't let you die so easily. Master Devourer's eyes revealed a ferocious expression when he saw Zhuo Wen floating in the starry sky without moving at all with his eyes closed. He stomped his right foot and shot forward like an arrow leaving a bow. He shot straight towards Zhuo Wen. Oh no! Zhuowen! On the Luo Yang whale, the beautiful eyes of the black-veiled lady changed slightly. She had been paying attention to Zhuowen all this time. When she saw that Zhuowen's vitality was gradually recovering, she heaved a sigh of relief. Seeing that Master Devourer intended to kill Zhuowen while Zhuowen was unconscious, the black-veiled lady's beautiful eyes changed greatly. Without any hesitation, she commanded the Luo Yang whale to rush towards Zhuowen. As the Luo Yang whale was closer to Zhuowen, although its speed was much slower than Master Devourer's, it was still one step ahead of Master Devourer and carried the unconscious Zhuowen. Then, it fled towards the distant starry sky without stopping. Unfortunately, Master Devourer caught up with the Luo Yang whale not long after it fled. Snatching food from the tiger's mouth. You're overestimating yourself. Master Devourer sneered coldly. He grabbed forward with his right hand. The devouring power, which was mixed with the law of heaven and earth, condensed into a huge hand. It pressed down from the starry sky and slammed heavily on the Luo Yang whale. The black-veiled lady clenched her teeth and formed a seal with both of her hands. She commanded the Luo Yang whale to spurt out thick Luo Yang fog, which formed a tortoiseshell on the surface of the whale. Unfortunately, the Luo Yang fog's defense was like an empty shell in front of the huge hand. It broke upon contact. Puff. The black-veiled lady spat out a mouthful of blood. The Luoyang whale was thrown out by the huge force of the huge hand like a piece of trash. It flew backward for a long distance in the starry sky before it managed to stop. The countless creatures in the Luoyang whale's inner world were shaking violently as if the end of the world had arrived. All of them were terrified. Die. The moment the Luoyang whale stopped moving, Master Devourer's attack continued. The huge hand was like a mountain and continued to attack the Luoyang whale. This time, the power of the huge hand was many times stronger than before. Obviously, Master Devourer intended to kill the Luoyang whale and the countless creatures in the Luoyang whale with this move. What should we do? In the Luoyang whale's inner world, Yuan Hongwen, Ji Chenyang, Long Xiaotian, and countless other creatures looked up through the Luoyang fog and stared at the huge hand that was getting closer and closer. Their faces were filled with despair. Master Devourer was too terrifying. It was a powerful existence at the early stage of the divine realm. Even though it had been severely injured by Zhuoan, its strength was still far beyond that of a demigod. It was definitely not something that the Luoyang whale and anyone else could contend against. Zhuoan, whom everyone had placed their hopes on, was also in a coma at this moment. No one could think of anyone who could save them. The black-veiled lady clenched her jade-like hands tightly. Her nails dug deep into her palms and almost bled. She stared at the huge hand that was getting closer and closer. She was very clear that when the huge hand completely fell, she and the countless creatures in the Luoyang whale would die. The black-veiled lady squatted down and gently stroked the face of Zhuoan, who was lying beside her with her flawless jade-like hands. She sighed and said, "Zhuoan, I know that your heart is with elder sister Chen Shui, but sometimes, things like love can't be forgotten with time. It can't be forgotten just by turning around and leaving. I thought that the last song that I played before leaving could cut off the last tie between you and me. But time is like wine. The longer it is, the more mellow the wine of longing becomes. I can't forget you, so I entered the central region alone. I agreed to the conditions of the previous Luoyang whale queen and entered the central region. I also obtained great power. I thought that I could help you, but now I find that I'm still useless. I still can't help you." Speaking of this, the black-veiled lady slowly removed the veil on her face. She stared at Zhuoan's face and sparkling tears fell. She cried with a smile, "If I die, will you remember me? Will you miss me? Or will you still treat me as a passerby in your life? No matter what you treat me as, I don't want you to die. You have to continue living. I believe that you will definitely save elder sister Chen Shui and reunite with her. I will completely become a passerby in your life. I just hope that you won't forget the farewell song I played for you." The black-veiled lady slowly stood up. She faced the large hand that was about to fall and the aura on her body began to slowly strengthen. This kind of strengthening speed was very fast and instantly pushed her to the level of a half-god. "Ao Wu." The Luoyang whale suddenly cried out. There was a trace of sadness and reluctance in its voice, like a child who had lost its mother. It kept calling out, "Wu Shong." Suddenly, a thick hand grabbed the black-veiled lady's shoulder. Then the black-veiled lady's delicate body trembled. She slowly turned her head and looked at Zhuoan, who had already woken up. The powerful aura on her body slowly withdrew. "Don't do anything stupid. I'm here for everything." Zhuoan smiled at Moyan Wu Shong. Looking at Moyan Wu Shong's beautiful face, Zhuoan's heart was full of sighs. Actually, from the first time he met the black-veiled lady, Zhuoan already had some guesses in his heart, but he didn't think too much about it. Now, after the black-veiled lady had completely removed her veil, Zhuoan suddenly realized that the black-veiled lady was Moyan Wu Shong. No wonder the black-veiled lady treated Zhuoan so well when they first met. Did you do it on purpose?" Moyan Wu Shong rubbed her eyes. She thought of something and suddenly asked. Zhuoan touched his nose and said with an embarrassed smile, "I also just woke up. You don't have to worry about it." Seeing Zhuoan's appearance, Moyan Wu Shong's beautiful face turned red like an apple and was full of shyness. From Zhuoan's expression, how could she not know that Zhuoan should have woken up for a while and was just pretending to be unconscious? Thinking of the shameful words she had said before, her heart was full of shyness and she couldn't wait to find a hole to hide in. Let's not talk about this now. Let's get rid of this annoying master first. Chapter 1880. Powerful. The purplish-black lightning bolt possessed both the destructive power of lightning and a strange devouring power. When the power of destruction and the power of devour fused together, the power of the purplish-black lightning reached an extremely terrifying level. The giant hand was extremely fast and arrived above the Luoyang whale in an instant. It was so big that it almost covered the sky. The Luoyang whale was huge, but it was as insignificant as an ant in front of the giant hand. Zhuowen's awakening was naturally felt by the countless living beings in the Luoyang whale. The Rika people, in particular, were all excited. Zhuowen was so famous in the Rika that he was almost a deity. In the eyes of the Rika people, Zhuowen was a god, an omnipotent god. When Zhuowen stood in front of them, it was as if any difficulty could be easily solved. On the other hand, the living beings outside the Long family, especially the Central Plains cultivators represented by Yuan Hongwen, did not feel any relief after seeing Zhuowen wake up. Their hearts were still filled with a heavy feeling. Boom! The purple-colored lightning instantly collided with the giant hand. However, the crushing force of the giant hand that everyone had expected did not appear. Instead, the giant hand paused in the air for a moment before it was completely enveloped by the purple-black lightning and annihilated into nothingness. Master Devourer's pupils shrank as he stared at the purplish-black lightning bolt. He screamed and involuntarily retreated. Zhuowen's eyes were as bright as stars. With the help of Taoist Master Kang Long, his spiritual sea had completely transformed into a spirit. Due to the transformation of his spirit, Taoist Master Kang Long's self-created celestial technique, the slaughtering finger of Yellow Springs, had also evolved into a powerful superpower the moment his spiritual sea transformed into a spirit. The slaughtering finger of Yellow Springs was Taoist Master Kang Long's self-created celestial technique. It was extremely malleable, and the power of this self-created celestial technique would increase as its owner's cultivation level increased. The moment Master Devourer retreated, Zhuowen pointed his right finger at the void and executed the advanced slaughtering finger of Yellow Springs. Countless water droplets from the Yellow Springs emerged from Zhuowen's divine soul. Zhuowen's spirit was inherited from Daoist Kang Long, and it contained billions of Yellow Spring water droplets that Daoist Kang Long had collected throughout his life. The amount had reached a shocking level. Zhuowen speculated that even if the slaughtering finger of the Netherworld did not advance from an immortal technique to a divine ability, the power of the slaughtering finger of the Netherworld formed by the billions of Netherworld water droplets would reach the power of an ordinary divine ability. Billions of water droplets gushed out from the Yellow Spring, forming a huge, round, yellow gate of reincarnation, tens of thousands of feet long, beneath Master Devourer's feet. The gate of reincarnation was so huge that it seemed to stretch as far as the eye could see. Coincidentally, Master Devourer was right in the middle of the gate of reincarnation. The moment the gate of reincarnation opened, a terrifying suction force that contained the power of reincarnation came from within the gate of reincarnation. Master Devourer was caught off guard and his legs were sucked into the gate of reincarnation. However, Master Devourer was a decisive person. The moment his legs were sucked into the gate of reincarnation, his right hand turned into a blade and slashed at his legs. He cleanly chopped off his legs and used the recoil force to escape from the gate of reincarnation. After escaping from the gate of reincarnation, Master Devourer heaved a sigh of relief. He felt a lingering fear in his heart, but soon, he began to curse Zhuowen in his heart. Unfortunately, before Master Devourer could recover from the dangerous situation just now, Zhuowen had already appeared behind Master Devourer at an unknown time. Clang! Zhuowen abruptly pulled out the iron sword that had splattered blood. His speed was extremely fast, and in the blink of an eye, he had pulled out the iron sword. A blazing and terrifying sword light swept out from the tip of the iron sword, forming a huge crescent sword chi. Master Devourer did not even have time to react before the crescent moon sword energy slashed down from the top of his head, cutting him into two. The moment Zhuowen pulled out the first sword, he used the slaughtering finger of Yellow Springs again. The huge gate of reincarnation appeared under Master Devourer's feet once again. When the gate of reincarnation opened, a huge finger that was as big as a mountain slowly stretched out and landed heavily on Master Devourer's body. Rumble. The moment the huge finger landed on Master Devourer's body, Master Devourer let out a blood-curdling scream. His body that had been cut into two collapsed into countless pieces of black flesh. These pieces of flesh were extremely dense, and they were scattered in an area of several hundred feet or even several hundred feet. Moreover, these pieces of black flesh were constantly wriggling. They began to merge with other pieces of black flesh as though they were slowly healing. Staring at the wriggling pieces of black flesh, Zhuowen narrowed his eyes and pulled out his sword again. At the same time, the power of the second-level Dao intent was added to splattering blood. An even more terrifying sword light soared into the sky. When this sword light rose to the highest point, it suddenly scattered into countless light dots. These light dots were filled with extremely sharp sword energy, and they accurately landed on the scattered pieces of black flesh. Originally, Zhuowen thought that these sword lights could completely annihilate the scattered pieces of black flesh. However, he was wrong. The vitality of these pieces of black flesh was much more tenacious than he had expected. When the sword light slammed into the black piece of meat, it immediately blasted the black piece of meat into countless smaller pieces of meat. Moreover, these smaller pieces of meat also wriggled and gathered together to form an even larger piece of meat. Zhuowen's eyes revealed a pensive look. He knew that Master Devourer's previous life was a parasite in Master Devourer's body. Because it had devoured Master Devourer, its vitality was extremely tenacious. For the current Zhuowen, killing Master Devourer was still a little difficult. Master Devourer's previous life was a parasite in Master Devourer's body, and this parasite has an innate fear of Devourer. The Heaven Devourer eye between my eyebrows is a key part of Master Devourer, so I'm afraid it can restrain Master Devourer. When he was in Master Devourer's body, Zhuowen had personally witnessed the Heaven Devourer eye's miraculous ability to restrain parasites. Therefore, he opened the Heaven Devourer eye again with an attitude of giving it a try. The moment he opened the Heaven Devourer eye, Zhuowen could clearly feel the excitement transmitted by the Heaven Devourer eye. Whoosh! Another purple-black lightning bolt shot out from the Heaven Devourer eye. This time, the lightning bolt was much larger than before. Moreover, the moment this purple-black lightning bolt shot out, it dispersed into countless purple-black electric threads, densely distributed in an area of several hundred meters, completely enveloping the surrounding black flesh. Then, Zhuowen heard Master Devourer's terrified scream, as if it had met its most terrifying natural enemy. Master Devourer's scream only lasted for a moment before it stopped. Then, countless electric threads gathered into a lightning bolt, shooting into the Heaven Devourer eye between Zhuowen's eyebrows. Master Devourer's vitality is really tenacious. It didn't die even after that. Through the Heaven Devourer eye, Zhuowen could clearly sense Master Devourer's every move as he was sucked into the Heaven Devourer eye by the purple-black lightning bolt. Master Devourer's countless black flesh pieces seemed to be frozen, cut into countless small parts by the electric threads, and imprisoned in the deepest part of the Heaven Devourer eye. After being baptized by the purple-black electric threads, the wiggling black flesh pieces completely stiffened, no longer wiggling. However, Zhuowen could feel that these black flesh pieces hadn't lost their vitality, but had fallen into a deep slumber. Furthermore, these black pieces of meat were not simple. Zhuowen could sense that these black pieces of meat were hiding a terrifying amount of energy. This energy didn't belong to Master Devourer, but to Master Devourer. Master Devourer's power was too strong. Although it was on the verge of death after giving birth to Master Devourer, it was still extremely terrifying. Although Master Devourer had devoured the last of Master Devourer's energy, it couldn't exert all of its energy. After all, the time it took to devour Master Devourer's energy was too short. If Master Devourer was given enough time, it could exert the full power of Master Devourer. At that time, even Yang Yi, who was at the late Heavenly God realm, might not be its match. Unfortunately, Master Devourer was too careless. The moment it devoured Master Devourer and advanced to the early Heavenly God realm, it attacked in a high-profile manner. It didn't take the numerous cultivators of the heavenly armor continent seriously at all. It didn't even take God Ganj seriously. Of course, if Yang Yi hadn't appeared out of nowhere, and Zhuowen hadn't comprehended the second-level Dao meaning, borrowed Tsungji's power, and sacrificed his life to create the fifth step sixth sword, Master Devourer wouldn't have ended up in such a sorry state. However, there weren't so many IFS in the world. Master Devourer had been completely sealed by Zhuowen's Heaven Devourer Eye, so it couldn't cause any trouble for the time being. What happened to Zhuowen? How did he suddenly become so strong? Inside the Luoyang whale, Yuan Hongwen stared blankly at the scene, especially when he saw Master Devourer being devoured by the Heaven Devourer Eye between Zhuowen's eyebrows. His heart thumped wildly, and he was shocked. In the Luoyang whale world, countless creatures fell into silence. However, after a short moment of silence, they burst into enthusiastic cheers. Originally, they thought they were going to die, but they didn't expect things to turn around. Everyone stared fervently at Zhuowen's back. They knew that the owner of this seemingly thin back had saved them all at the last moment. Lord Long Wen, the Riker people knelt down on one knee. The fervent look in their eyes was the most intense. The other cultivators in the Luoyang whale world followed the example of the Riker people and knelt down on one knee before Zhuowen. Zhuowen had saved them, so he deserved their kneeling. Long Xiaotian and Feng Xiao snuggled up to each other. Their eyes were full of pride. Zhuowen was their son. As a mother, they were naturally gratified to see their son turn the tide and be so outstanding. Bang! A muffled sound came. In the distant starry sky, a violent explosion suddenly set off a terrifying ring-shaped airwave. This airwave was like a meteorite belt, radiating in all directions. Wherever it passed, the starry sky was distorted and turned into a vacuum of nothingness. In the center of the airwave, a stalwart figure slowly walked out. You're tuning in to the Celestial War YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.